Chapter 487. The influence of Central TV Department 5 was really explosive. The Dart God statue that was about to reach its peak actually increased by a few hundred points overnight, surpassing the 9,000 mark. This was not the most impressive thing. The other 4 God statues, including Otto's God statue, had also increased in strength. On average, each God statue increased by about 10%. Among them, the God statue with the most significant increase had even increased by 20%, reaching 12,000 a day. The total production of the 5 God statues reached 48,000 a day, closing in on the 50,000 mark. Obviously, as his fame grew, more and more people knew of him, and a new source of faith appeared. That was, those who had no interest or special hobbies after finding out about him first, would go online to find information related to him, and then take the initiative to come into contact with his achievements in car racing, piano, pencil sharpening, and Dota towers. Young people, those who liked esports, did not like Dota towers in the past, but lol. After watching his videos, their interest expanded, and it became a new source of faith. The middle-aged people who had already entered the age of 20, after watching his car racing videos, recalled the days when they were young, riding motorcycles or driving cars with a group of like-minded friends, speeding along the mountain roads as fast as lightning. There were also such situations where fans who originally only knew about him stopped at his darts and Dota towers. When they looked back at his information and found his godly piano skills, they would worship him for other skills. It was also possible for one person to provide multiple shares of faith. His total reserve of faith had reached 330,000, and he was getting closer to the 600,000 required for the special training promised to Xuelin. At noon the next day, when the plane landed, Xan Qin ran away and suddenly disappeared. No one knew where she went, and she did not say when she would be back. Chen Guang heaved a sigh of relief, but also felt a little reluctant. The 40 contestants who came from all over the country to participate in the finals were arranged to stay in a 3-star hotel in the suburbs of Beijing, almost all of them outside the 8th Ring Road. The staff of the escort association here said that it was close to the competition venue, and it was convenient to go to the competition. Everyone was also in tears. If they're poor, just say so. It's not like this is the first time we found out that the escort association is poor. The escort association didn't have much to do in the afternoon, so the contestants were allowed to rest in the hotel. Chen Guang had planned to use this time to interact with his fans, but every time he was about to start work, someone would knock on his door. Players from all over the country were really curious about this god of darts who had appeared out of nowhere. They could always find all kinds of reasons to chat with him. Otherwise, they would say that they were paying him a visit, but in reality they were just curious. There were also a few old leaders of the Armed Escort Association who were said to be the closest to the mysterious president, the legendary vice president. In the end, this bunch of scammers didn't even know what the president of the Escort Association looked like. Chen Guang finally understood what Liang Fatsai had said before. This unlucky chief of the Escort Association must be the #1 lazy bum in the world. He was very angry that he had been disturbed all this time. Of course, the entire afternoon wasn't without a happy incident. Some of the female contestants from other provinces really needed to improve on their personal culture, so they started taking off their clothes the moment they entered the room. After enjoying a few seconds of free dancing, the righteous young man Chen Guang decided to slam the door and run away. "Little Lin, I'm at the Lofa Hotel in Yenshan District. Come and save me. Otherwise you'll have to collect my corpse." Chen Guang called Lin Jingwei. Lin Jingwei was shocked. "What? Who can touch you under the emperor's nose? Wait for me, I'll come and save you." "Wait, what's going on? I'm dying of boredom." Scram. 15 minutes later, Lin Jingwei miraculously appeared in front of Chen Guang. He was driving a domestic car worth over 100,000, and Gaoya was sitting in the car. It turned out that Lin Jingwei's house was really close. "I say, are the two of you going to be tied together? I'm doing this all of a sudden, and the two of you are going to be together?" Chen Guang sat in the back seat and teased. Gaoya blushed at his words and punched Lin Jingwei. "It's all his fault. Why did I have to come and help him choose his clothes? So annoying." Gaoya seemed to be blaming him, but she was actually showing off sweetly. "Don't be like that. Showing off your love will shorten your life." Chen Guang hadn't been to Beijing before, and since it was rare for him to come, the three of them decided to take advantage of the afternoon to have a good time. Before they left, Chen Guang pulled Lin Jingwei aside and asked him a few questions. "Alright, I have something to ask you. One said that her house is near Beijing, but when I asked her where exactly, she wouldn't tell me. She only told me that there's a weird-looking mountain near her house, and there seems to be a Confucian temple on it. Do you know where it is?" Qin Guang asked. Lin Jingwei frowned and thought for a long time. He shook his head like a rattled drum. I don't know. I've been thinking for a long time, but there's no such place in Beijing. Gaoya, who was sitting in the car, saw the two of them whispering to each other. She yelled, "What are the two of you discussing so sneakily?" Lin Jingwei chuckled. Nothing, nothing. Gaoya waved her fist at Lin Jingwei, then said to Qin Guang, "Oh right, Qin Guang, do you want to go to Right Hand's concert in a few days? Little Lin and I fought for a long time to get 3 tickets, but my high school classmate can't go because of something. You should come too, or else the tickets will be wasted." Qin Guang decisively refused. No. What? Gaoya and Lin Jingwei asked in unison. The old man has a lot of things to deal with every day, and he spends hundreds of thousands of yuan every minute. How can he go to a concert? Isn't it a waste of precious time? Gaoya looked at him suspiciously. Don't tell me that you and Jin Shuiwei are for real? Are you afraid that if I find out, I'll tell Xiaoxuan? Qin Guang spat. For real, my A**s. You two can go be lovey-dovey. I don't want to be a third wheel next to you. You want to hurt me with public displays of affection? Dream on. Of course I want to go. But I have to avoid you guys. I don't believe that you guys will bump into me at such a big concert. After returning to his hotel room, he turned on his computer and logged into QQ. Sun Xiaoxuan was online and had just sent him a message. Only then did Qin Guang realize that someone had edited his speech from yesterday's CCTV news and uploaded it to a foreign YouTube channel. Not only that, in the same video, this person had also combined Xan Qin's video with the CCTV news. It had only been half a day since the video was uploaded to YouTube, but the number of views had already exceeded 1 million. It had caused a big impact abroad. Unlike China, where no one cared about darts, overseas, especially in England, darts was a very popular sport in bars. After watching the video with subtitles, many international friends turned up their noses at his speech and performance, which looked like special effects in the documentary. The most typical was what a top English professional player said: "In the world of darts, there has never been a place for the Chinese. In recent years, they have been eager to prove themselves in all fields, and now they have finally extended their dirty tentacles to darts." A black player from Africa said, "A cheater who uses computer special effects to make it onto China's TV news is really funny." A Native American contestant from the United States said, "I, Polikaka, have already arrived in Yenjing 2 days in advance. I strongly look forward to facing off against the strongest cheating contestant in human history. The World Championship referee will not allow contestants to use magnetic darts." These people's comments were all posted on Facebook or Twitter, so Qin Guang couldn't see them. However, Sun Xiaoxuan was overseas, so it was very convenient for her to log into these websites. At the same time, in order to strengthen her English besides helping out in the lab, she browsed the web all day long. She could ask for information and practice her English. She saw all these news and was angry in her heart. These people are too much. After Sun Xiaoxuan sent the screenshot to Qin Guang, she added a QQ emoji with a red face. Qin Guang replied her very calmly, "A few days ago, those professional players in China also saw me like that, but now they see me as a god. I'm relieved that you don't take it to heart. Of course, we are the great China, and we have to have the demeanor of a big country. We can't be calculative with those barbarians. They only doubt us because they are ignorant. They will understand after the competition." Qin Guang added a smiley emoji. "Then I'm going to the lab. The teacher is rushing me. I've learned a lot of things recently and I'm about to become a little genius in the lab. Let's go." After chatting with Sun Xiaoxuan for half an hour, she went to the lab. After closing the chat window, Qin Guang took a deep breath and said to himself, "I'm not angry, I'm really not angry. *CK. I'll ask how much this stupid Wrangler mouse costs later." Qin Guang thought to himself as he looked at the cracked mouse that had been crushed into pieces. Speaking of which, my 170 million in cash has already flown away for a long time. Why hasn't it popped up after so long? *CK. Liuli couldn't have been scammed, right? Then wouldn't this be the worst fraud case in history? It can't be, right? Thinking about it carefully, with her character of learning how to do business from watching TV series, the probability of this happening was slightly higher than the probability of a successful investment. He hurriedly picked up the cup and rushed into the glass world, intending to point at Liuli's nose and ask her clearly. His figure appeared out of thin air about 2 to 3 meters high in the center of Yunqing, and then fell straight down. Relying on his amazing balance, he landed firmly on his feet. "Madam Liuli, what are you doing?" Strange, Liuli's expression doesn't seem right. Is she sick? Epilepsy? At this moment, Lioli's face was pale with fright. Her hands were trembling, pointing at him one moment, waving at the ground the next, and holding her head the next. Her mouth was wide open and she wanted to scream but held it back. The gorgeous feather dress trembled crazily with her angry actions. She didn't know what had happened. Qin Guang shrank his neck. Could it be that something happened to the heavenly Holy Grail? Is the sky falling? Lioli finally calmed down and pointed at his feet with her teeth clenched. Your feet. Take them away. Jumping back, Qin Guang exclaimed, Ah! Why is there a flower here? Chapter 488. At the place where he had just landed, there was a delicate flower lying under his right foot. No, this was definitely a delicate flower before, but now, the petals had all been trampled to pieces, and the branches had been broken into who knew how many sections. It was simply miserable. Ah! I'm going to kill you. A soundless roar of anger suddenly sounded from the bottom of Qin Guang's heart, filled with endless rage and irritation. Qin Guang was stunned. This voice was definitely not Lioli's, nor was it the electronic voice that came with the Holy Grail. Oh little dear. Calm down. Calm down. Lioli moved forward, and with trembling hands she picked up the flower that had fallen to the ground a little. With a crack, under the watchful eyes of both Qin Guang and Lioli, this flower's branches were finally completely broken, leaving only a small stubble growing on the misty ground. That voice sounded again. Big sister, it hurts. My waist is about to break. Qin Guang instantly understood. *CK, there's a guest in my Holy Grail? Is this flower? No, it should be called flower mud now. And this waist of yours isn't about to break, it's already broken. Why didn't you guys say so earlier? It wasn't easy for me to come here, so you can't blame me for destroying this flower. This is just a not-so-beautiful coincidence. Oh my god. Lioli was so shocked that she called it a god. Qin Guang looked at her innocently. I'm going to strangle you to death. Lioli pounced forward and grabbed his neck. That's right, big sister, hurry up and strangle this scourge to death. The dear flower that only had one level of roots left could actually still speak. Qin Guang expressed his disbelief. Impossible, I'm your only savior. What are you going to do if I die? 15 minutes later. Where is this? Who am I? Where did I come from? Where am I going? Who is that person who's being strangled down there? Why does he look so familiar? *CK me. I'm really going to be strangled to death. Qin Guang coughed. Big sister, you're really something. You've really strangled me to death once. I've died once. Lioli put her hands on her hips. I can bring you back from the dead. Can't I? Lioli, why don't you let him die? How heartbreaking. Look at how miserable I am now. Lu Minghua, who only had half a root stubble left, felt injustice for himself. Azure turned around and looked at the half of the flower on the ground. Lu Ming, your incarnation has been destroyed, so it's best if you don't speak. Alright, how unlucky. The voice replied, and the stubble on the ground slowly disappeared. Dead? Qin Guang asked. Lioli knocked his head. I won't die, but I'm in trouble because of you. The incarnation that I went through so much trouble has been stomped away by you. There's no telling when I'll be able to condense it again. So you're blaming me? Qin Guang shrugged. Since he wouldn't die, there was nothing to worry about. He was beaten up by Lioli again, and today's unlucky matter was finally over. In the end, Qin Guang still didn't understand why another guest had come to his cup. She seemed to be quite familiar with Lioli, but when he asked her how she got here, Lioli didn't say anything. After all this time, this trip was pretty much for nothing. He didn't dare to ask about the 170 million. In fact, Qin Guang had thought about it, but Lioli ignored him, which meant that she didn't have the intention to say it. Before he was kicked out, he got some good news. Recently, his faith points were quite abundant. Lioli seemed to have used up some of her faith points. She would definitely be out of the Skyline Cup's middle realm within a month. Alright, this was equivalent to not calculating at all. He always felt that Lioli must have used her faith points to do something else, and casually found an excuse to fool him. This was called using public office for personal gain. When Qin Guang got out of the cup, the lustrous feather robe on Lioli's body gradually shattered and dissipated, turning into specks of stars. Lioli's face was livid. She put on the clothes that she had taken off one by one with great difficulty, but in the end she had to break the lustrous feather robe and use it to protect Dear Cry's soul. After being kicked out of the cup's middle realm, Qin Guang was really bored. He simply looked at the script sent by Big Beard Deng on the computer in advance. This matter couldn't be avoided. At that time, whether or not he could make a performance in the cup's middle realm was another matter. First, he had to look at the content of this stupid script. After a long time, Chen Guang let out a long breath. He was scared to death. He thought that the second male lead would have a lot of scenes, but it wasn't so scary. According to the script, his scenes added up to less than 10 minutes. He would appear at the beginning, show his face at the end, and have some lines with the first female lead. That was it. The main scenes of this movie were focused on the first female lead. It was called The Woman. The main expression was the story of the first female lead's indomitable spirit in the face of difficulties and the brave struggle. Finally, she used the strength of a woman to save her drug addict childhood sweetheart. Chen Guang had to play the role of this drug addict. Thinking of Big Beard Deng's previous movie, Tears for a Kingdom, the main scenes were also focused on Jiang Ye's heroine and Jin Shiyue's official daughter. Chen Guang felt that although Big Beard looked like a man, he was actually a friend of women. He must be super afraid of his wife. He didn't remember any of the lines. After watching for a few hours, he only had a slight impression of the whole story. But obviously, although the second male lead didn't appear for a long time and didn't have many scenes, it was a test of acting skills. For a new actor, acting as himself was the easiest and most comfortable job. Chen Guang's assistant, who only lasted 30 seconds, might not even be considered as his debut on the big screen. This time he was serious. In the end, he had to take on such a difficult role right off the bat, a hysterical hedonist who still had a bit of conscience in his heart, a violent drug addict. Damn, whenever he thought of this character that was so complicated that he wanted to strangle the scriptwriter to death. Couldn't you have said a happy and funny college student? Then I don't need to learn acting at all. Forget it. I'll throw away the script and sleep. Tomorrow's national final? I won't even have to open my eyes to win. The next day at 9 o'clock in the morning, the contestants took 2 buses to the competition venue. The national final of the China Amateur Darts Championship officially began. The standard of the finals was much higher than the regional finals. The competition venue was located in the Olympic Village. It was a medium-sized indoor sports hall that could accommodate 8,000 people. Originally, the escort agency was worried about the attendance. But with the big victory of the 5 capitals, the escort agency's confidence in the finals was greatly boosted. The results didn't disappoint them. Many people started lining up after 8 o'clock in the morning. The competition officially began at 10 o'clock. Before it was 9:30, there were at least 2,000 people lining up outside. The venue's layout was also very professional. The live broadcast team of Central TV Department 5 was much more professional than that of Dachuan Province. Whether it was manpower or equipment, they were much better. After the contestants arrived, they were led to their respective resting rooms by the tournament's organizing committee. The champions of each division's preliminaries received some special treatment. Each of them had their own private resting room. The other 4 regional champions were different from Chen Guang. Although they were amateur players, they were able to make it to the top in each of the major divisions. That meant that they had formal professional training. Some of the contestants were even accompanied by professional coaching teams. Unfortunately, everyone's fighting spirit wasn't very high at the moment. They all knew that unless Chen Guang's arm was broken, the outcome of the competition would be decided from the beginning. Chen Guang sat alone in the resting room. He watched the other contestants who had entered their resting rooms being surrounded by their coaching teams. They cheered them on and arranged all kinds of tactics. He was very envious of them. At this moment, a group of people rushed in from outside the door. It was very lively. Chen Guang stood up from his seat. "What are you doing?" "Oh, hello, Mr. Chen. We are the makeup team of Central TV's live broadcast team. We need to put on some makeup for you, Mr. Chen." Chen Guang spat. "I'm a 7-foot man. Why would I need to put on makeup? Why don't others put on makeup?" The middle-aged woman leading the team laughed. "That's different. We all know that you will definitely be the champion. The escort agency hopes that we can make the champion look more radiant." Chen Guang slammed the table angrily. "Ridiculous. I look like a radiant young man just by standing there. Do I even need to put on makeup? Besides, I'm also very handsome without makeup." The middle-aged woman leading the team only laughed and did not say anything. She took out her cell phone and showed a screenshot of Chen Guang's beautiful face during his live broadcast. "Please don't put on heavy makeup for me. Don't make me look too flirtatious. Just a little more normal will do." Chen Guang, who had the best looks in the darts world, admitted defeat. The Central TV program team was indeed professional. The makeup team did not really make Chen Guang look like a Korean-styled celebrity. After a short while, all they did was tidy up his hair, remove the eye wax that had not been washed off when he woke up in the morning, and apply some foundation on his face that was said to brighten up the room. Qin Guang touched his face and felt uncomfortable all over. He felt like he was going to have an allergic reaction. The makeup team had just turned around and left, but he had already scrubbed off a layer of his face. Only those who had put on makeup could understand the bliss of being barefaced. It was almost time for the contestants to enter the venue. Qin Guang took a sip of tea before he went out and started to worry. Ever since he got the heavenly holy grail, he had never let it out of his sight. This competition was very serious, and when the contestants entered the venue later, he could not possibly hold the cup in his hand, nor could he hide it, nor could he bring his backpack with him. He was feeling very anxious. At this moment, a familiar figure suddenly appeared at the door. Qin Guang stared and laughed. "Oh, my little Xan, you're finally back in time. Help me carry my bag and help me with the live broadcast." Xan Qin walked up to him with a cold face. She first looked at his hair, then said, "If you call me little Xan again, I'll shave your head. I'm a man of my word. Hand it over." Hello everyone. The first national finals of the China Amateur Darts Championship has officially begun. Let's invite all the contestants to enter the venue. The first to enter the venue is our Southwest Division's preliminary champion, Qin Guang. Although he has just made his debut in darts, he has already been recognized by many professional players in the country. Everyone calls him Mr. 9 Darts. This is because he has completed all his matches with 9 darts since he joined the official competition. Chapter 489. Thousands of kilometers away in Lilai County of Dachuan Province, Qin Guoli was lying on the sofa and turning on the TV in boredom. Now that the 5 major European football leagues were on hiatus and the NBA finals were over, his work at the hot pot restaurant would have to wait until the afternoon. His mahjong game this morning had been stood up again, so Qin Guoli was so bored that he was covered in lice. His days were really unbearably idle. With the idea of making a Hail Mary, he switched the channel to Central TV Department 5. At least let me watch a billiards match. Then old Qin saw the amateur darts tournament and saw Qin Guang, who was leading the way. He was chewing on melon seeds, but when he opened his mouth, it fell to the ground. "Honey, come and see God." "No, quickly come and see your son. What the hell is going on?" Feng Rong sat down and glanced at the TV. "That's impossible. When did our son learn this? There are so many people with the same name." Qin Guoli said firmly, "It's definitely our son. I saw someone just now." Feng Rong also saw him. "It really is little Guang. This competition looks quite lively. Will the food allowance of the participants be deducted? They don't have to pay for the competition, right?" Qin Guoli gave Feng Rong a thumbs up. Our thinking circuits are not on the same wavelength. Qin Guang also heard the introduction of himself on the big broadcast from the stadium. He thought to himself that the host was really free. There were a total of 40 participants, and if he introduced everyone like this, he would probably be able to make it in time for breakfast tomorrow morning. Following behind him are the other 39 contestants. Damn it. If I remember correctly, I didn't bribe Central TV, did I? You guys are so close. There were a total of 40 participants in the finals. They would participate in 2 elimination rounds and be divided into 5 groups. Each group had 8 participants and 5 would be eliminated. The remaining 15 participants would then be divided into 3 groups. Each group would have 5 participants to compete for the group champion, and the final 3 participants would compete for first, second, and third place. The duration of the competition was about 2.5 hours. The escort agency had cleverly arranged for Qin Guang to be in the 5th group so that the competition would not lose its suspense as soon as it began. The other contestants who were waiting to go on stage were so nervous that they did not know where to put their hands. Only Qin Guang, who had been sitting there since the beginning, felt particularly bored. He simply let Xan Qin hold his phone and interact with the bullet screen in his live broadcast room. Quite a few of the netizens in the bullet comments had switched on Qin Guang's live stream. At the same time, they were also watching Central TV Department 5's live stream. Watching both at the same time, it was a double camera experience for them to experience a brand new live stream of the sporting world. Qin Guang looked around the competition venue, picking out interesting things to chat about in the live broadcast room. Qin Guang pointed the camera at the stands not far away and said, "Do you see the beauties over there? They're so beautiful. I bet 100 yuan that Central TV's director will definitely cut the camera to her." Quite a number of people in the live comments were stunned. This was because Central TV Department 5 had taken a good look at this beauty for a few seconds. The bullet screen was filled with 6,666 comments, and then he easily got a lot of gifts. "See, as long as you treat others with sincerity, they will teach you everything they know. Up until now, Qin Guang's followers in his live broadcast room had already exceeded the 2 million mark. It was different from other hosts who might have millions of followers on the surface, but who knew how many of them were actually living people. Qin Guang's 2 million plus followers were not necessarily his own people. They could also be haters. But the only thing he could guarantee was that he had never made any zombie fans, nor had he asked Little Tsong to help him do it even once. The popularity of the live broadcast room was increasing, and the number of people online was increasing. The chaotic rhythm of the bullet screen was also getting more and more chaotic, and the number of software advertisements was also increasing. Up until now, Little Tsong had already appointed more than 2 moderators in Qin Guang's live broadcast room. Little Tsong had not only urged Qin Guang to appoint a few moderators for himself. On one hand, it would allow the rich viewers to have a greater sense of participation. On the other hand, Little Tsong expressed that he was too short on manpower. Now that the country's regulations were getting stricter, not every live broadcast room was as pure as Qin Guang's. The timeliness of a live broadcast was also too high. It was simply too exciting for a female host to suddenly appear, and the pressure on the moderators was also too great. As for Little Tsong's reasonable requests, Qin Guang would always agree to them quickly, but he would forget about them the next moment. Qin Guang sat in the waiting area for the contestants. The stadium was very big and he could not be seen from every corner. But someone in the bullet screen reminded him of something. The group of foreigners sitting in the VIP area on the second floor were not ordinary spectators, but professional players from all over the world. They were about to participate in the upcoming World Championship. Qin Guang got up slightly and stretched his neck to look at the 30 to 40 contestants from all over the world gathered together. There were all kinds of skin colors. Each and every one of them was commenting on the Chinese amateur players below them. From time to time they would sneer, but there was no recognition in their eyes. "Old Liang, it seems like our international friends don't think highly of us?" Qin Guang said in a slightly displeased tone. "My overseas friends sent me what they said on Twitter. These guys are asking for a beating." Liang Fatsai, who was sitting in front of Qin Guang, was a little embarrassed. "There's nothing we can do about it. After all, our country has always been weak in the darts game. Our development is lagging behind, and we have never achieved any significant international reputation, nor have we had any players with dominating power emerge." "Isn't that the result of the escort associations in action?" Xan Qin, who was sitting beside him, could not help but ask. Liang Fatsai's face turned even redder. Yes, but it's different now. Don't we have you, Mr. Qin? In the past, they would never come to watch our Chinese amateur competitions. Don't be fooled by their harsh words. Aren't they here today because of you? They're also afraid of you." Qin Guang turned his head and said to his fans on the bullet screen, "Let me introduce everyone. This is the president of our Dachuan Province's Darts Association, Old Liang." Did everyone hear what Old Liang said? "Brothers, give me more gifts and help me advertise. Fans, give me strength. Give me a hand and accompany me to the World Championship to show our country's might." Liang Fatsai covered his old face and thought to himself, young people these days really know how to have fun. On the other hand, Xen Qin summed up Qin Guang's actions with a single word: childish. "You're an underage washboard. How dare you call me childish?" Qin Guang glared at Xen Qin. Xen Qin silently took out a sharp knife and hid it in her palm. "How did you bring this guy in? The security check for the competition is too childish." "Yes, that's right, I'm very childish." Qin Guang expressed that a wise man submits to circumstances. In the VIP stands, the American Indian player, Papalika, took out his cell phone and opened his Twitter app. "I'm looking forward to seeing the amazing performance of the best darts player in human history. However, until now, I've only seen a group of amateurs performing like clowns." He pressed send with a teasing smile on his face. The Mauritian player, Helvide, who was sitting next to him, was scrolling through his cell phone when he saw Papalika's tweet. He looked up and smiled at him. "Papalika, it's not good for you to say that. You shouldn't joke about skin color. Although I also think their performance is very clumsy. How can such soil breed good darts players?" Papalika shrugged. "Then I'll post another tweet to clarify that I'm not discriminating against yellow-skinned people. I'm also a brown person from Indiana. Mr. Helvide, you have dark skin too." The Spanish player, Joaquin, who was sitting next to them, suddenly leaned over and said in broken English, "I'm so disappointed. Did the Wuxia people deliberately arrange for that braggart to be the last to disgust us? I have to send a tweet to despise the Wuxia people who boast about themselves. Don't worry, everyone. We're here to see Mr. Nine Darts. Miracles are worth waiting for." Bant Wilkins, who was sitting in the front row, gently fiddled with his long blonde hair and smiled. Wilkins, who was from England, was the player who had won the most honors ever since the darts competition was formalized. So far he had won more than half of the more than 10 World Darts Championships. Even though he was almost 60 years old, he maintained his competitive form very well. He had easily won the last World Championship last year, and in the finals he had made a godly performance of 9 darts. Now he was considered a heavyweight in the international darts world. Since Wilkins had spoken, the others couldn't say anything else. Mr. Wilkins is right. Many of the players sitting there nodded in agreement. However, we really shouldn't allow the Wuxia people to humiliate our sport. Wilkins smiled and also sent a tweet. Chen Guang didn't have time to look at the people in the stands pointing and gossiping. However, it didn't take long before the comments of the people in the comments section were redirected to him. Chen Guang was happily scrolling through the comments section, but when he saw the comments he felt as if he had swallowed a fly. He stood up from the player waiting area and looked at the foreign pro players on the second floor. He ground his teeth so hard that creaking sounds could be heard. Just then Wilkins glanced over and smiled. "Oh, Mr. Nine Darts is there." The other foreign players heard him and turned to look at Chen Guang. "Old Liang, can I give them the middle finger?" Chen Guang asked. Liang Fatsai quickly grabbed one of his hands, and Xen Qin, who was beside him, silently grabbed his other hand. Liang Fatsai said anxiously, "No, please don't. This international gesture is too bad." Unable to use gestures to communicate with the other party in a friendly manner, Chen Guang pursed his lips and sat down again. He thought to himself, F***ck, just you wait for the old man. I'm not targeting anyone, but all of you here are my F***king faith. What were you talking about just now? Xen Qin vaguely heard something. Faith? Chen Guang waved his hand and smiled at Xen Qin's head. Nothing. Finally, the first 4 groups of players were done, and it was Chen Guang's turn in the 5th group. Bang! The first dart hit the bullseye in the 50-point area and he took first place. The huge stadium was filled with cheers. Nowadays, in the darts industry, Chen Guang's popularity in the country had almost reached its peak. Although what he said was indeed arrogant, at least no one could doubt him before he failed. Among the audience that day, at least a small half of them were his fans. It was only natural that his appearance would cause thunderous applause. Chen Guang stretched out his fingers and gestured a 9. His arm shot up into the sky. He wanted to use the most arrogant tone to tell everyone that he wanted to pass with 9 darts. Chapter 490. In the studio of Central TV Department 5's live broadcast program team, the country's most professional sports live broadcast program team was busy. Unlike the Dechuan Sports Channel, where Liang Fatsai could still visit from time to time, Central TV's live broadcast program team was not a place anyone could enter. The person in charge of the program team was giving out instructions at a very fast pace. The person who was originally arranged to be in charge of the live broadcast was not him, but another newcomer. But it was precisely because of the heaven-defying ratings of the Dechuan Sports Channel that the internal department of Central TV Department 5's attention to this live broadcast, which was originally arranged through connections, was raised to a whole new level. When Central TV first received the task from their superiors, they were extremely reluctant. In order to broadcast the Amateur Darts League, they even had to give up the live broadcast rights of the WRC World Rally, which they had already purchased. Although this was Central TV, they still had to care about the ratings and reputation. This was the political achievement of the leaders of the television station. Perhaps the evening news the day before yesterday had reported Chen Guang's high-profile interview without any deletions. This was the result of the internal discussion of the leaders of Central TV Department 5. The impact of creating a high-profile and arrogant athlete might not be good, but what if what he said was true? Then he was not arrogant but honest. This was a man-made hot topic. It was popularity and it was also viewership ratings. Although darts wasn't highly regarded in China, before Ding Junhui appeared, no one paid attention to snooker, right? If Chen Guang was really as good as he said, or if he was as strong as the domestic darts industry had always recognized, then why couldn't they promote him to be the king of darts? Extraordinary people did extraordinary things. Since ancient times, how many of the extraordinary people with extraordinary talents had kept a low profile? When Cao Cao was in dire straits, he was able to say words like, "Only the emperor and the ear," that looked down on the heroes of the world. Since Chen Guang had repeatedly proven his strength in the preliminaries, of course he could be even more arrogant. The person in charge of the live broadcast keenly caught Chen Guang raising his hand to the sky, and immediately shouted, "Camera 7. Zoom in." Zoom in from below and do a close-up of 3, 7. Let's add to Qin Guang's reputation. The person in charge gave a series of instructions, and the audience in front of their televisions saw this scene. The camera started about 1 or 2 meters in front of Qin Guang, and began to pan up at a 45-degree angle. They saw Qin Guang standing in the center of the resplendent competition hall, and his image grew larger and larger. He pointed his right hand to the sky, and the lights in the stadium behind him were dazzling. His entire body seemed to be covered in a halo. What's going on? Little Guang seems to have suddenly become more handsome? Feng Rong didn't understand darts at all, and could only comment on Qin Guang's current appearance. Qin Guoli took a bite of melon seeds. That's for sure. Think about who his father is. How could he not be handsome? Even Qin Guang himself did not know that such a simple act of posturing had been meticulously arranged by the Central TV Department 5's person in charge to elevate his image to a whole new height. Xan Qin, who was holding her cell phone and filming the live broadcast from afar, looked at the string of exclamation marks and all sorts of mushy flattery in the bullet screen. She could barely roll her eyes. But no matter how disgusting Xan Qin was, no one could deny that from this moment onwards, with Central TV Department 5's coverage covering the entire country, he was no longer an internet celebrity who only existed on Weibo. Instead, he appeared in front of the eyes of the entire country with a domineering attitude. After he left the stage, Qin Guang took a sip of his saliva and suddenly felt elated. Posturing in a live broadcast clearly had a mysterious bonus. Just like that, he had gained a few hundred more faith points. Unfortunately, this kind of thing could not be repeated. There was a limit to posturing and he couldn't stop. Otherwise he would be treated as a joke. Popalika spat. He's really embarrassing us professional darts players. Didn't he just score 50 points? Isn't that very common? What are these Chinese people cheering for? Which one of us can't do that? Wilkins coughed lightly. Popalika, you're too hot-tempered. This is his home ground. What's so strange about that? The Spaniard, Joaquin, gently stroked his carefully trimmed beard. This is their own competition. Let's just treat it as a crappy play. The referees of the World Championship won't let him tarnish the competition like that. This is called a mirage-like carnival in the desert, Wilkins commented. Popalika grinned. Well said, Mr. Wilkins. As expected of someone from Shakespeare's country. In this desert of darts, they're using cheating methods and even computer special effects to create a fake genius. Do the Chinese really want to prove themselves in this World Championship? Joaquin's face darkened. Then we have to be careful. Maybe they're trying to do something big while they're the host. Wilkins's expression didn't change. I will communicate with the World Darts Alliance in advance. We can't give them any chance to cheat. Truth be told, they had all seen Qin Guang's competition videos, but they didn't believe it from the bottom of their hearts. This was China, a barren land for darts. It wasn't impossible for a world-class genius to appear here. But the scenes in the videos were too ridiculous. This was a competition, not Hollywood. However, 15 minutes later, these international friends who were giving pointers were all speechless with their mouths agape. This was simply unimaginable. That's right, Qin Guang did what he said. Once again he cleared the stage with 9 darts. Moreover, he didn't even stand in front of the line of darts. Instead, he stood 7 or 8 meters away and threw them casually. Are you messing with us? In the first round, Qin Guang crushed all his opponents without any suspense and advanced to the second round. Before he left the stage, he grinned at the stunned international friends from afar and raised his eyebrows to provoke them. Look at all of you with your mouths agape. Young lads, are you frogs in a well? The Central TV director was even more cunning than Qin Guang. He was able to capture the stunned looks of these world-class professional players and did a close-up on the television. Those who didn't know much about darts might not have understood. Just like Feng Rong said, "Why are you letting the foreigners in? Continue filming, my son." But the darts enthusiasts who were watching the competition on their computers or in Qin Guang's live broadcast room were in an uproar. These snobbish foreigners are scared to death. Mr. Jin, who was watching TV in Wujing, laughed and slapped the table. He said to Xiaofeng and the other girls at the front desk, "Did you see that guy with his mouth agape? His name is Popalika. That's him. A few years ago, I wanted to invite him to our club for an event. In fact, it was just to help us promote our club. Guess what he said? I gave him $20,000 for free, but he said he couldn't be bothered to waste his precious training time. He can even run $5,000 happily in the United States. Isn't that just looking down on others? Now he's dumbfounded and pissing his pants, right?" Xiaofeng reminded him, "Boss, Mr. Qin is the best. Why are you so happy?" Mr. Jean said proudly, because Mr. Chin is our lifetime member. An hour later, it was the second round of the competition. Qin Guang passed with 9 darts again. Wilkins and the others could not sit still anymore. Ridiculous. That's impossible. This is shameful cheating. I'm going to complain to the World Escort Association. China should be disqualified from hosting this year's World Championship. If this person uses the same equipment in the World Championship, we have no chance of winning at all. They're going crazy thinking about winning the championship. This group of people was making a ruckus. Just like Qin Xiaoxin, who had seen this scene for the first time, they were unwilling to believe it even though they had seen it with their own eyes. It was just too bizarre. Wilkins stood up. I have to talk to the people from the Wuxia Escort Association. In order to defend this elegant gentleman's sport, I have to expose this farce. Let's go together. The others stood up one after another. Regardless of what these people thought, the fight for the first, second, and third place continued in full swing on the other side. There was still no suspense. Qin Guang did as he said and passed with 9 darts again. Congratulations to Qin Guang for winning the Wuxia Amateur Darts Championship. As the commentators shouted excitedly on the television, Qin Guang stood on the podium with 2 other people. The vice presidents of the Wuxia Escort Association, accompanied by the hostesses, stood in front of the podium with medals and flowers. Let us pass. Wilkins waved his arms angrily. Mr. Wilkins, I don't understand what you're trying to do. Old Zhao, the most senior member of the Wuxia Escort Association, was sweating profusely as he stood in front of this group of tall and strong foreigners. Your shameful behavior has damaged the fairness and justice of the darts sport. You're turning our profession into a farce. I demand that you stop this competition immediately and revoke that actors' championship. Wilkins roared as he pointed at Qin Guang, who was on the podium not far away. Xiao Hu, what did he say? Old Zhao couldn't understand what Wilkins was yelling about, so he asked the interpreter beside him. The interpreter, Xiao Hu, was rather embarrassed. Old Zhao was also a hot-tempered person. If he were to translate Wilkins' words, the old man would probably jump up and start a fight with him. Old Zhao, he's questioning the fairness of this competition and wants to revoke Qin Guang's championship, Xiao Hu said after some deliberation, ignoring the most unpleasant part of Wilkins' words. Even so, Old Zhao was still angry. Isn't this nonsense? This is our own competition. There's absolutely nothing wrong with Qin Guang's equipment. We've checked it at least 3 times. Besides, didn't he use other people's darts to prove himself in the 5 capitals? Xiao Hu said helplessly, they didn't see it with their own eyes. I understand that word. This black guy is talking about Hollywood, right? They're saying that we're actors, right? Old Zhao waved his hand. Stop these people. At least before the live broadcast ends, don't let them disrupt the venue. This is China. This is our own competition. How can we tolerate these foreign devils telling us what to do? If you have any objections, then fight us fair and square in the World Championship. Now that we're treating you as guests, don't stay here and make trouble for us. Xiao Hu, translate what I said word for word. Old Zhao is right. This is China. Whether I cheated or not, you'll have to wait until the World Championships referees know how to judge. But for now, shut up. Unknowingly, Qin Guang had already walked over and spoke in fluent English. Chapter 491. The award ceremony finally came to an end. Central TV Department 5's program team saw that the situation was not looking good and decisively cut off the signal. It could be considered a perfect ending to the live broadcast on television. However, Qin Guang's own live broadcast room was still open, and XN Qin was still filming from the side. Many people in the live broadcast room who were watching from both sides suddenly perked up. Central TV Department 5's live broadcast had ended too quickly and abruptly, and they knew that there might be trouble at the venue. Fortunately, there was still Almighty Superman's live broadcast room to watch. Many people who were only watching TV turned around and saw a good show. The number of viewers in Qin Guang's live broadcast room rose rapidly. In just a few seconds, it went from 3 million to several 100,000 viewers. Brother Almighty is going to slap his international friends in the face. This bunch of monkeys, they think that we Chinese are easy to bully. They even want the 8-nation alliance to enter the capital? Did you guys understand what Brother Almighty said just now? My English didn't pass, but I really admire Brother Almighty's standard spoken English. Someone immediately translated Qin Guang's words in the bullet screen and added, Brother Almighty's English is much more authentic than the tapes in the 9-year compulsory education textbooks. On the other end, Wilkins and the others saw Qin Guang walking over and stopped fooling around. Instead, they pointed at Qin Guang's nose and said, "You shameful thief. You must let me check your equipment. Otherwise, we will get the World Darts Federation to disqualify you from the World Championship." The other foreign professional players were equally agitated. Elder Zhao was about to fly into a rage after listening to Xiao Hu's helpless translation, but Qin Guang put his hand down and gestured to Elder Zhao not to act rashly. Immediately, he stood in front of Wilkins and looked at him indifferently, not caring that this person was currently the most respected professional darts player in the world. "Friend, you better understand one thing. We have our own judgment on whether it is fair or not. Now, please shut your mouth and go back to your hotel to rest. If you have any complaints about me, you can talk about it after you beat me in the World Championship. You want to disqualify me? With your baseless guesses and framing, you are not qualified enough." If it was another time, another place and another group of people questioned him, he might choose to use someone else's darts to perform the godly skill again on the spot, making these people despair. But now Qin Guang did not intend to do so. If he did so on the spot, he would be bowing to the unreasonable foreigners. They were not only insulting Qin Guang but the entire country. The best way to shut them up was to go to the World Championship and tear their last bit of dignity to shreds. As for now, he would just ignore their requests and let them stay where they were. He had to let them understand whose territory they were standing on. The current Wuxia was not a weak country that could be easily bullied. They might feel aggrieved and angry, but wasn't this just right? Wilkins blushed when he saw that he could not do anything, but there was nothing he could do because what Qin Guang had said was the truth. The foreign professional players could only glare at Qin Guang fiercely before turning around to leave. Walken turned his face away and muttered something. Qin Guang subconsciously felt that this guy's words were definitely not pleasant to hear, but he actually could not understand it. Popalika also pointed at Qin Guang and mimicked Walken's tone. His pronunciation was a little strange and Qin Guang could not understand what he was saying. The black player from Mauritius, Helvede, was also muttering something. It was another language that he had never learned before. The group of people walked out noisily, stopping every 2 steps and looking back at Qin Guang as they muttered something. Looking at their expressions, he knew that it was definitely not something good. *CK, what are you guys talking about? Ever since he entered the Sea of Moments and became the King of English, Qin Guang had not experienced the feeling of not understanding what his international friends were saying in a long time. He turned around and looked at Xiao Hu. What are they talking about? Xiao Hu also had a bitter look on his face. I don't know either, but it's not English. *CK. Where are these bastards from? Are they cursing without speaking English? Qin Guang's face darkened. Helvede, what did you just say? Walken poked the black man's waist proudly. The black man, Helvede, smiled. Only 50,000 people in the world can understand the dialect of my African ancestral tribe. What about you? Walken chuckled. The dialect of our Catalan autonomous region, Tarragona, is a Spanish dialect that only a few 100,000 people can understand. You are insulting our players. We will lodge a protest with the International Darts Federation. The 2 of them spoke in English and the staff at the side protested. Walken raised an eyebrow. How did you know that I was cursing? I was using my native language to praise your players for their noble character and superb skills. In the distance, Qin Guang was furious. He gulped down a mouthful of water. *CK, I really want to strangle these pretentious bastards. At that moment, Lioli's voice suddenly rang out in his mind. Let me tell you a piece of good news. There are signs of your first one-line Heavenly Cup realm. From now on, it could appear at any time in the next 24 hours. Qin Guang didn't think much of it. He only nodded slightly to indicate that he understood. When he got back, he would grab the movie script and the acting materials that Lin Jingwei had brought him to the bookstore yesterday and crazily study them. He just needed to focus on his acting skills for this one-line Heavenly Cup realm. Anyway, there were still 24 hours left. There was no need to worry about it now. He gulped down another mouthful of water and cursed in his heart. If it wasn't for the fact that the old man doesn't understand your stupid native language, I would definitely strangle all of you to death. At that moment he realized that something was wrong. That familiar feeling came so suddenly and without any warning. *CK. Sister Lioli. Didn't you say 24 hours? Qin Guang was about to cry. The 24 hours you mentioned was a little too King short. Wasn't your 1 day's notice a little too short? The difference between before and after was less than 3 seconds. Your family's 24 hours are 3 seconds long. Yes, that's right. His first one-line Heavenly Cup realm came without saying a word. Looking at Qin Guang sprawled out in front of her, Lioli, who had just hurriedly used the clouds to cover her body parts that weren't suitable for children, was also speechless. What I said just now was that within 24 hours, it could happen at any time. So, 3 seconds counts as within 24 hours? Qin Guang asked. Lioli nodded. Strictly speaking, that's not wrong. Thank you. Qin Guang said through gritted teeth. Lioli was at a loss. Thank you for what? Qin Guang said again. Thank you for refreshing my outlook on life once again. You made me understand that there is no lower limit for deceiving people. Lioli was about to punch him again. Do you think I want to do this? Qin Guang was already prepared. He nimbly rolled to the side and spat at her. Passing through the white mist, he pounced on her covered waist and abdomen, somewhere between her legs. Her white mist could only block her vision, but it couldn't block certain things. With a faint smack, it hit the bullseye. Time stagnated at this moment. Lioli was stunned for a moment, then her face turned red and then turned blue. F***ck, I want to strangle you again. Qin Guang got up and ran into the distance. Let's talk nicely, Madame Lioli. Lioli turned into an evil ghost and pounced forward. I can't talk anymore. Today either you die or I die. She failed to catch up with Qin Guang in the end. The space channel of the world in the cup appeared in time and sucked Qin Guang in. Lying in the colorful space channel, Qin Guang patted his chest. Damn it. That was so scary. Thankfully, the old man reacted fast or I would have died again. That spit just now was too wretched. It was definitely not me. Passing through the space channel that looked like a long corridor, Qin Guang landed on the solid soil with a thud. Slightly opening his eyes, he looked at the red sun with a milky outline in the sky and the crescent moon that was moving slowly on the other side of the sky. Sniffing again, the air was filled with a familiar yet strange smell of dampness. He slightly tilted his head to both sides. This was a long, narrow and dirty tunnel that was full of cobwebs and mud. Qin Guang slowly straightened his body and walked to the end of the tunnel. Craning his head out, he looked at the dilapidated but prosperous dock not far away. Feeling the slight shaking of the soil below him, an idea was brewing crazily in his heart. Hey, buddy. Why are you dressed so strangely? Is there anything that I, Old Bob, can do for you? On this treasure island, there is nothing that I, Old Bob, can't do as long as you have gold coins. Just when he was in a daze, a tattered old face full of wrinkles suddenly appeared in front of him. This old man who called himself Old Bob, wearing a tattered gray linen shirt, was talking to him while tidying up his messy and muddy bird's nest hair. Qin Guang keenly saw that the old man's hand that was hidden at his waist was actually holding an oily dagger. The empty chip on the handle of the dagger seemed to be telling him that there used to be a bright gem here, but now it might have been replaced with wine. Finally, Qin Guang grinned. He ignored Old Bob and laughed crazily with an unbridled and arrogant voice. Ha ha! Treasure Island. Is this the legendary trading island, Treasure Island? Ah, I'm going back to the Sea of Time. This is the F***king Sea of Time. He couldn't tell what he was feeling in his heart, but he felt familiar and excited at the same time. He never thought that the first realm within the Silver Line Cup would give him such a big surprise. When he left this place, he had thought that he would return one day. He thought that he would have to wait until he became the true master of the Holy Grail before he could freely travel between the real world and the Sea of Time. He never thought that there would be a glimmer of hope at the end of the tunnel. The Silver Line Cup had sent him back. I, Hu Hansen, am back again. The second officer of the N Royal. The strongest battle maniac, right, Qin? I'm back again. Qin Guang's body trembled uncontrollably. The more he thought about it, the more excited he became. The opening this time was much better than the last time they met, where he had been beheaded. Who cares what kind of test it is? Let's return to the N Royal first. Old Bob thought that he was a lunatic and was planning to take advantage of his madness to secretly take out a dagger and stab his stomach. After all, the quality of his strange clothes seemed to be quite good. Just the cloth alone could probably be exchanged for 3 ounces of rum. However, before he could take out his dagger, he was stunned when he heard the name of the N Royal. Chapter 492. Hey, omnipotent Old Bob, get me a ship. I have to return to the N. Don't be afraid. As long as you do it, Kimberly will have it. We people on the N always do what we say. Poor Old Bob was pulled by the neck into the alley by Qin Guang. Is there lard hanging around your neck? Qin Guang's hands were covered in grease after pulling the guy's collar for a short while. Then he cursed and wiped his hands on Old Bob's clothes, trying to wipe the grease back. In the end, there was more and more grease on his hands. Old Bob was on the verge of tears. "Mr. Wright, I'm covered in grease, but it's not my fault. I didn't mean to dirty your hands. Please don't kill me." As he spoke, old Bob's legs trembled uncontrollably, as though he had suffered a great shock. Qin Guang was rather puzzled by old Bob's reaction. He and the N Royal had swept through the Jade Sea in half a year, catching up from behind and becoming the overlord of the Jade Sea, becoming one of the top 10,000 powerful pirate crews in the Transient Sea. Although they were somewhat famous in the Western Sea, there was no reason for them to be so terrifying on the legendary Treasure Island. As far as he knew, the Treasure Island should be located in the Central Sea of the Transient Sea. This wasn't the N Royal's range of activity. Why was this old man so scared when he heard the name of the N Royal? When did I become so awesome? Could it be that after I left, someone made the story of the old man into a legend, spreading it from the Western Sea to the Central Sea like the legends of the Transient Sea for countless years? The Transient Sea, which was said to be boundless, was actually bordered by the walls of the transcendent Holy Grail. Apart from the endless seawater, there were also countless floating islands on the surface. Lord Guang said that these floating islands were actually dust floating on the surface of the water in the old man's cup. There were large and small floating islands, but they all had one thing in common, which was that they had no foundation. They all floated on the surface of the water and drifted along with the sea currents in certain areas. No one knew why these floating islands made of mud and rocks could float on the surface of the water and not sink. In the legends of the Transient Sea, people attributed this to the blessing of the sea god. Among them, the Treasure Island was a relatively large floating island in the Middle Sea region. In the vast sea of time, the Treasure Island was quite famous. Just like its name, it was a trading island. On this island, there were countless pirates from the 5 great sea regions. Everyone was here to exchange what they needed or to conspire. This was a chaotic island, but it represented a certain realm of order in the momentary sea. Countless large transactions took place here every day. They might be buying or selling treasures, supplies, slaves, or even the life and death of a famous pirate crew. As long as you have money, you can buy anything here. This was a sacred place for pirates to party, and it was also a port for people to obtain the qualifications to settle down in Middle-earth. Every day, there would be people handing over a considerable amount of gold berries here, abandoning their dreams of conquering the sea and obtaining the rarest ordinary life, becoming a new mainland resident recognized by the Middle-earth government. Similarly, every day there would be hot-blooded youths from Middle-earth who would pull out a few people to establish a small pirate crew and set sail. Perhaps they would join a pirate crew that was currently recruiting crew members, starting from hard labor as they pursued their own legendary path. There were similar islands near the other continents, but Middle-earth had the largest surface area. The Treasure Island was the most famous in the momentary sea as a transit point between Middle-earth and the boundless sea. Because of this, even though Qin Guang had never left the Jade Sea, he was still very familiar with the words Treasure Island. Other than the countless floating islands, there were also several continents recorded in the momentary sea. These continents were distributed in various regions of the momentary sea. The largest one was located in the middle of the momentary sea, which was precisely Middle-earth. Its surface area was larger than Eurasia on Earth. These continents were the few continents in the entire momentary sea. Qin Guang said that these were actually flower petals floating on the surface of the water when the old man first entered the momentary sea. With Middle-earth as the coordinates, the momentary sea was broadly divided into 5 seas, namely the North, South, East, West, and Central Seas. These 5 seas were each divided into tens to hundreds of medium-sized seas. The Jade Sea, where the N Royal was mainly active, belonged to one of the medium-sized seas, Obro. The area of the Jade Sea was even larger than the Pacific Ocean. Dozens of subordinate seas, similar in size to the Jade Sea, formed the Obro Sea. Obro, Pease, Bolik, Hyro, and so on formed the West Sea of the momentary sea. Countless floating islands were scattered throughout the entire momentary sea. Some became small countries, while others were occupied by tyrannical pirate groups as strongholds. The distance between the different seas was extremely large. Even the neighboring Obro and Pease seas, even with the speed of a top-notch pirate ship like the N Royal, which had the support of a mysterious power, it would still take at least a few years to make a round trip. Not to mention the long distance between the West Sea and the Central Sea. This was what Qin Guang knew when he was in the momentary sea. However, after he left, he didn't know what happened in the momentary sea. Why did the name of the N Royal spread to the faraway Treasure Island, causing an old ruffian like Bob to tremble in fear upon hearing the name? He couldn't understand it no matter how he thought about it. "You've heard of me?" Qin Guang blocked old Bob in the alley and asked fiercely. Old Bob shook his head. No. Then why are you afraid of me? Qin Guang felt strange. I haven't heard of your name before. I've heard of the N Royal. I also know of the legendary second mate who disappeared forever. The people on that ship are all demons. Every single one of them has the blessing of immortality. Old Bob's teeth chattered as he spoke, as though just saying the name was enough to make him feel fear. What happened to the N Royal? How did he become a demon? Qin Guang endured the discomfort of the grease and pulled old Bob in front of him. Old Bob's face instantly turned pale and bloodless. He hugged his head in pain and shouted, "Oh my God! You actually called her by her name. Are you going to declare war on them? No, you're really the second mate of the N Royal who disappeared. I'll give you 5 minutes to tell me everything you know. Otherwise I'll crush every single bone in your body inch by inch." Qin Guang was angered by this guy's reaction. Why was it so damn difficult to ask something? Unexpectedly, old Bob straightened his neck. Sir, just kill me. I'm begging you, please don't force me to mention that terrifying name again. I'm begging you, I'd rather die than talk about them. You're serious? Qin Guang grabbed the old guy's neck and gradually raised him up. His entire body was overflowing with killing intent. Arriving at the familiar sea of moments, he gradually regained the feeling of the vicious and merciless second mate from before. His breathing became more and more difficult, and Bob's eyes gradually turned white. However, he still refused to let go. Yes sir, just kill me. After a long time, Qin Guang threw Bob to the ground dully. He had finally let this pitiful old guy go. Forget it. Help me find a ship. I want to go to the West Sea. It shouldn't be difficult, right? Yes sir. 2 hours later, Qin Guang changed out of his strange attire and placed it in a sack on his back. He slowly boarded a large ship with a group of hard laborers. Old Bob wasn't bragging. He was indeed well-informed and resourceful. Very quickly, he found out that the Horseshoe Pirates were about to head to the West Sea and were recruiting hard laborers. As a former second mate of a well-known pirate group, Qin Guang had held back a few tricks and was noticed by the crew of the Horseshoe Pirates and successfully boarded the ship. For some reason, the N Royal seemed to have become a taboo name in the Sea of Moments. Qin Guang didn't ask any further and only planned to leave Treasure Island first. Once he met Anne, all his problems would naturally be solved. As long as he could enter the Sea of Moments, Qin Guang had a special method to reconnect with the previous crew members. He wasn't in a hurry to show off on the Horseshoe. Instead, he curled up in the second floor of the ship with the other newly boarded laborers, waiting for his assignment. Some doubts lingered in his mind. He had to sort out his thoughts and at least figure out what the test of the World and Cup was. In addition, unlike the previous times when he would immediately know the contents of the test when he entered the World and Cup, this time, there wasn't the slightest movement after so long. This was very strange. He was still a little flustered. Just as he was thinking about this, a ray of light suddenly appeared in front of him. Qin Guang stared at it. Oh, it had indeed been upgraded. What appeared in front of him was a light screen like a computer screen, with a line of words displayed on it. Mission objective: learn all languages in the Sea of Moments, a total of 4,978, and become the strongest language master in history. 4,978 foreign languages. *CKME. Qin Guang slapped his forehead. He knew it would be this unlucky thing. Before he came in, he had only thought about two things. One was his acting skills, and the other was that he didn't understand what those foreigners were talking about, so he was in a bad mood. Of course, he wanted acting skills more. It was just in time to satisfy the urgent need of Big Beard Deng's movie. If he acted beautifully, he wanted to be famous anyway. It wasn't impossible for him to become a real movie king. But what were the benefits of becoming a language master? It could only be used to bicker with foreigners, alright? This was the World in One-Line Heavenly Cup that only appeared once every month and a half. If he used it just like that, wouldn't it be a waste? But then again, he could only learn English in the World and Spirit Cup. After upgrading to One-Line Heavens, he could actually learn close to 5,000 foreign languages in one go, all the languages of Earth. Chapter 493. He started to imagine that after he went out, a few African students would be muttering in front of him, saying that they couldn't find their way or didn't know what was good to eat. Then he would stand in front of them and chat with them in their native language. That scene would definitely scare them to tears. What Indians, what Amazons, what Inuit, bring it on. I'm proficient in 5,000 languages around the world. The strongest language genius in history, Old Master Qin Guang, who never changed his surname or name. Just imagining it made him feel that the effect of leveling up was explosive. This was something that ordinary people couldn't do. No, not even humans could do it. Without a doubt, this was very strong, so strong that it made people's hair stand on end. Forget it, since it was already like this, there seemed to be no other choice but to accept it. This kind of heaven-sent opportunity seemed to be something that others couldn't be envious of. Many people had acting skills, but it was difficult for one person to master 5,000 languages. Wouldn't this easily change human history? Other than that, it seemed very difficult to be recognized as the best in the world in acting skills. This thing didn't have any quantitative test standards, unlike piano, where there were at least 10 difficult pieces to challenge. The realm of a language master was different. As long as he could create an opportunity, he would be able to speak in all kinds of languages in front of the entire world. If anyone was dissatisfied, he could drag the aboriginals out and show them off. He didn't even need to prove that he knew 5,000 languages. Perhaps he just needed to practice a few hundred or so languages, and it would be enough to make everyone kneel before him. Judging from the difficulty of the tree god statue, it seemed that a language master was better than a movie king. The statue in the middle realm of the one-line heavenly cup was definitely much better than the heavenly spirit seeing sky, right? The production had to be doubled, right? Once he accepted this setting, it seemed that learning 5,000 foreign languages wasn't bad. *ck not bad my ass. The last time he came here to learn English, he died 95 times. This time, you want me to learn 5,000 languages. How many years do I have to learn? In addition, it was very likely that this was a monkey throwing a bun. Although the old man boasted that he was a genius, he couldn't possibly remember it, okay? Let the old man calm down for a while. I can't calm down. I want to die. Where would I go to learn how to talk to other people in the indigenous African language? Brother Black from Mauritius and Papalika from the Indians, wait for me to come out. I'm going to spit you to death, you bastards. Qin Guang pondered. Forget it. There's still a long way to go. Since we're already here with the heavenly Holy Grail's character, it won't give us a way out. At most, we'll just waste time. Just as he was thinking this, the horseshoe picked up speed and left the port completely. Suddenly, the ship seemed to be hit by something, but it quickly returned to normal. Old Bob was walking back in boredom. Today was another fruitless day. Before that guy left, he had promised that there would be Kimberly, bread and rum. In the end, nothing. Why do I feel like I've been tricked? Forget it. If that guy was really the second mate of the En Royal, then he should be thankful that he was still alive. Just like the rumors, he had black hair, black eyes, yellow skin, and was extremely ruthless. In a storm 100 years ago, everyone saw his body slowly disintegrating into powder. It was said that he had been taken away by the god of the sky. In these 100 years, the En Royal suddenly rose to prominence, starting from the Jade Sea. In just 100 years, they became one of the 12 strongest pirate groups in the Transient Sea. This was an invincible warship blessed by God. They had the most terrifying and crazy warriors, and every member had an immortal body. One had to know that the shortest existence of the other 11 pirate groups was at least 500 years old. In the past, the En Royal wasn't an impressive pirate group, and was only in the middle to upper reaches of the Jade Sea. Many people said that it was the treasures left behind by the god of the sky that turned the En Royal from an ordinary person to a legend. With regards to this, Captain Anne, who was passionate about combat and women's rights, did not refute it. Moreover, according to insiders, this pirate group had indeed never had a second mate since 100 years ago. The legend of the disappeared second mate, Right Chin, accompanied by the rise of the En Royal pirate group, resounded through every inch of the Transient Sea. Now that he was back and out to sea, he wanted to meet up with his crew. If it was really him, then there would probably be a bloodbath in the Transient Sea. How terrifying. Forget it, I'll just lie down and sleep. As long as I sleep, I won't be hungry. These things shouldn't be something a small character like me should care about. Old Bob, where's your house? Bring me there to rest. Suddenly, a demonic voice came from behind him. Old Bob turned around in a daze, his pupils growing larger and larger. He felt as though he had seen a living ghost. Heavens, Mr. Wright. I clearly saw the horseshoe leave in the sunset, but you? Old Bob choked on his words for a long time. Qin Guang was dripping wet, like a drowned rat. He waved his hand tiredly. All right, less nonsense. I'm very tired now. That's right, he was physically and mentally exhausted. At this moment, his heart was filled with 10,000 curses. On the second floor of the horseshoe, the first mate looked at the human-shaped hole in the cabin with an ashen face. Damn it, who can tell me what's going on? A peon who was originally sitting beside the hole trembled. Sir, that person was originally sitting at the front, but he suddenly bumped into something. Then he was violently pushed against the wall. Following that, the deck of the ship was smashed by him and he fell down. That's right, it's definitely a ghost. Nonsense. There are no ghosts on the horseshoe. The angry first mate waved his sword fiercely, chopping the two fellows who said there were ghosts to the ground. Actually, these two poor fellows were wrongly accused. Only Qin Guang knew what was going on. He had no way of leaving Treasure Island. Sitting in the cabin, he bumped into an invisible wall that was very characteristic of the heavenly Holy Grail. It was also the boundary of the world in the cup that he was very familiar with. The horseshoe sailed away, but he who was sitting in the cabin was blocked by this invisible wall. As a result, his body broke through the planks of the ship, forcefully creating a human-shaped hole. In other words, the real Sea of Moments was the 8th layer of the immortal God realm. If his movement space was really as big as the entire Sea of Moments, then this would not be the world in the sliver of Heaven's cup. He had rich experience in this. Last time in the world of the piano he was trapped on the Virginia. This time he was trapped on Treasure Island. Thank the heavens this Treasure Island had a diameter of 10 kilometers. With so many living people it shouldn't be that boring, right? Chapter 494. Old Bob had been suffering for the past few days. He inexplicably provoked a guy who claimed to be the second mate of the Inn Royal, and he really couldn't beat him, nor could he drive him away. He hated the fact that he coveted this person's clothes that looked like they were made of good quality fabric. He was possessed and wanted to test him, but it turned out that he had led a wolf into the house and walked right into the trap. Since then he had been stuck to him. The attic with only one room and one bed on the roof was occupied by a dove and a magpie's nest. The owner of the attic was beaten up and had no choice but to spend an entire day cleaning the place with tears in his eyes. Although the clean and tidy room looked quite comfortable, especially the bed with new bed sheets and cup covers, old Bob, who was used to sleeping in a dog kennel, couldn't believe his eyes. This was a star-rated hotel that could only be enjoyed after a big business deal. He really wanted to sleep there for a night. But old Bob said that he was sleeping on the floor. It had been 3 days since he was occupied. One person eating became two people eating, and this person with a big fist had a very picky appetite. It was extremely difficult to serve. Sir, it's been 3 days. May I ask what are your plans? I've already sold the bronze fireplace for this roast goose. If I don't think of something, I can only move this bed for meat tomorrow. The two squatted on the ground together, and old Bob finally mustered up the courage to say so. Qin Guang raised his head and looked around. He was also quite embarrassed. Old Bob was right. This bed was indeed the last piece of furniture in this house that was less than 10 square meters. He always lived and ate his food and beat him up from time to time to urge him to work. It seemed to be a little too much. Bob, don't worry. Since you followed me, I naturally won't let you suffer. I swear in the name of Right Qin. I already have a whole set of plans, but the situation is a little more complicated than I thought. You also refused to talk to me about the current situation of my crew. You have to understand that it's all your fault that I can't contact my crew, Qin Guang promised casually. Bob wanted to cry. He wanted to shout out loud. Actually, I didn't follow you. It was you who pestered me, okay? Also, we're really going bankrupt. Old friend, think of a way to tell me some information. And is a nice person. She's not as scary as you think. Let's talk about Inn Royal for a while. She won't come from the West Sea to eat you. As long as you follow me well, I can even introduce you to the ship and make you a member of the noble Royal Anne's crew. You know little Winnie, right? He's the slave we rescued from the Jibri pirates' floating island. He's a genius and I'm the one Winnie admires the most. Believe me, as long as you follow me, our journey will be the sea of stars. Old Bob was shocked. What? You're talking about the Bloodhand Wally who's ranked in the top 100 of the bounty list of the entire Transient Sea? Oh? Winnie Jr. was in the top 100 of the bounty list. Who the hell were the Bloodhand evildoers? When I left, he was just a cute snot-nosed ghost. Sir, will you swear on your life that you are not deceiving me? If you really are the second mate of Right, I do dare to talk to you. But if you're not, people will really die. You don't know how terrifying the 12 emperors of the Transient Sea are, especially the ship of God blessed, the Inn Royal. According to the rumors, no matter who you are, as long as you are in the Sea of Moments, if you dare to disrespect the Inn Royal verbally, the omnipresent gods will be their eyes and ears. They will definitely appear before you at a certain time and crush you into pieces. Idiot, you think I'm bragging after all this time? Also, was the Annie so mysterious? Don't you see how long I've been muttering here? So what if I scold him? Annie, come and hit me, you big-breasted girl. Why don't you come and beat me up? Clapping his hands, Qin Guang continued, Look, isn't there no one to beat me up? Old Bob's face turned pale with fright again. He plopped to the ground and said, No, don't. I'm begging you, stop it, I'm begging you. All right, I won't curse anymore, okay? Can we get down to business now? Let's talk now. Old Bob finally relented. He swallowed his saliva. Actually, this matter is too unimaginable, but they really are that strange. If not for the fact that I'm about to go bankrupt from being eaten by you, I would rather die. Even if you let me die, I wouldn't reveal a word to you. So now let me ask you a question. As long as you can answer it, I will choose to believe you. Don't judge me by my poor appearance. Actually, Old Bob, am one of the most experienced intelligence merchants on Treasure Island. I know a lot of secrets that others don't. This is my ability to make a living. No problem, ask away. What's the relationship between Jack Sparrow, the captain of the Black Pearl Pirates, and the Annie Royal? I knew it. Old Jack would do things alone. In the past, I told Annie that he had a rebellious bone in his head and that he would definitely have a disloyal heart. Annie insisted on being stubborn and told me not to believe in the superstitions of the Eastern Magi. Qin Guang slapped his thigh and acted as if he was enlightened. Then he continued. Jack used to be the captain of the 2nd boarding combat team on the Annie Royal. I was also the captain of the 1st boarding combat team. Also, Jack Sparrow didn't go by that name at first. Originally we all called him Old Jack. He didn't have a surname. The surname Sparrow was given to him by me. At that time he asked me what the 3 words Sparrow meant. I told him it was very cool and everyone followed suit. After a long time he accepted it. Qin Guang shrugged. Old Bob's eyes widened. Obviously, Qin Guang was right. It seems that I really have to believe you. 15 years ago, Jack Sparrow betrayed the Annie Royal. Now they are enemies. Furthermore, the Black Pearl Pirates are currently one of the top 100 strongest powers in the Sea of Transient. Old Bob finally relented and began to tell Qin Guang these secrets. Qin Guang didn't express his opinion. Wait, I feel that something is wrong. When I was on the ship, Old Jack was so old that he was about to enter his coffin. I originally thought that he wouldn't live for more than a few years. How could he still have the energy to torment himself like this? Mister, could it be that you don't know? In our Sea of Transient, the pinnacle powerhouses won't die. Impossible. Who wouldn't die? Qin Guang glared. Old Bob looked at Qin Guang for a long time. He seemed to have organized his words in his mind before saying. Frankly speaking, I'm very surprised that the legendary vice mate Right Chin doesn't know about this. However, when you left, the Annie Royal was only one of the top 10,000 pirate groups. At that time, your pirate group didn't have any undying rank powerhouses, so I don't find it strange. Following that, the two of them finally opened their hearts and chatted for a long time. Qin Guang received a huge shock. Old Bob, I know too many things today. To be honest, my mind is a little messed up now. Let me think about it quietly. You go find something to eat first. Tomorrow at the latest, we'll think of a way to change the situation. As it turned out, while the two of them were chatting, the prompts from the transcendent Holy Grail had never stopped. From the time he left the Sea of Transient until now, a little more than 3 months had passed in the real world. However, 100 years had passed in the Sea of Transient. This meant that without considering the time reset after death, the flow of time in the Sea of Transient and the real world was about the same as the passing of time in the real world. Apart from that, the biggest secret of the Sea of Transient was only known to Qin Guang. Old Bob told Qin Guang that in the entire oceanic world, the powerhouses ranked at the top would not truly die. They had a high chance of resurrection. For example, the captains of a few pirate groups. Blackbeard Teach and Royals Annie Polly, Bartholomew, Kid, Red Hair Songies, David, Jack Sparrow, Terrifying Sickle. Some of these people had lived longer and had been captains for thousands of years. Even the newly promoted 12 emperors, Annie Polly, had died of old age 15 years ago at the age of 90. After that, she used 10 years to return to the Annie Royal and reclaimed her captain position at the age of 10. Now, after her resurrection, Annie was already 15 years old. 15 years ago, when Annie passed away, he had already been reborn twice. At the age of 30, Jack Sparrow, who was in the prime of his life, took advantage of the unstable hearts of the crew to split up the Annie ship. He took his second battle team and betrayed the Royal Annie Pirates, starting to work alone. The strong would not die. This was an open secret in the circle of the strong in the Sea of Transient. In Treasure Island, the center of information and trade, many people knew about it. Back then, the Anne Royal was in a remote area of the Jade Sea, and she was not strong enough to enter this circle. That was why she did not know about this. But later on, everyone on the N Royal had the protection of immortality. Qin Guang speculated that they were indeed affected by him. Even among the other pirate groups of the 12 emperors, only a small number of the strongest members could reincarnate and not die. All the members could not die. This was the fundamental reason why the N Royal could rise so quickly in 100 years. Little Winnie became a bloody villain whose name shook the 5 seas, and even Jack Sparrow, who worked alone, rose quickly. That was why the N Royal was known as the ship of divine protection. But Qin Guang knew that everyone else was wrong. From a certain point of view, everyone in the Sea of Transient would not die. This was because this was a space that was completely sealed off from the outside world. Death, to the people of the Sea of Transient, was just another form of existence in this sealed space. After the body decayed, it would become a wandering soul, waiting in line for the chance to reincarnate. The difference between the strong and the weak was that once one's strength reached a certain level, they could use their powerful strength to preserve the memories of their previous life when they were reborn. As for the weak, their memories could not be preserved. Every time they were reborn, it was the same as returning to zero. Even if they were revived, they would become another person, just like a child growing up in reality. This was death in name. Chapter 495. The people of the Momentary Sea did not know what was going on, they only knew that experts had a chance of surviving. Therefore, in this oceanic world, everyone would think of ways to become stronger, just for that sliver of hope of surviving. Everyone fought for all kinds of treasures amidst the rain of blood, just to obtain the mysterious power contained within the treasures. Or they cultivated black magic, signed contracts with all kinds of demons, selling their souls and bodies, just to obtain a bit more power. Or they became the so-called God's protector, or they pursued the pinnacle of royal authority, grasping all the treasures in the secular world in their hands, using gold, silver and jewels to exchange for the power they wanted. Or they pursued the limits of their bodies and souls, going through cruel and bloody battles again and again to break through their true selves. Either die or become stronger. All of this was done by the people of the Momentary Sea, just to climb up the pyramid of the strong preying on the weak, to become a small group of undying rank experts at the top of the pyramid. After seeing through the essence of the world, Qin Guang sympathized with these people. How was this blissful undying? It was purely endless torture. The realm of the Momentary Sea was simply a huge cage. Everyone here was a soul that was kept in a cage. Even the so-called undying rank experts that were worshipped by the weak were actually just slightly higher-level lab rats in this cage. The people here would never be able to escape, they would only wander back and forth in the endless cycle of life and death in the Momentary Sea. No matter how hard they struggled to survive, constantly pursuing to become stronger, they were unable to escape the fate of being ants. The people in the realm of the Momentary Sea were truly too pitiful. Their lives were so hopeless. Yet they did not know anything. Those so-called experts were immersed in their fake long lives, feeling complacent. They did not know that they were just frogs at the bottom of a well, birds in a cage. Here was the problem. Qin Guang himself was the master of the transcendent Holy Grail, and the realm of the Transient Sea was only a realm within the transcendent Holy Grail that was of a relatively higher realm. Qin Guang speculated that the people on the N Royal were able to go against the norm and possess immortal souls even when they were weak. It was because they were enveloped by the power of the Holy Grail when they were with him that they were recognized by the realm of the Transient Sea as having the qualification to be immortal. In a sense, Annie and the others were indeed blessed by God. This God was, of course, the old man himself. Thinking of this, he actually felt good in his heart. Stop right there, the sexy huntress in leather who was passing by. You're just a meat toilet in the old man's world in a cup. There was also the cute girl standing at the bridgehead with 17 or 18 bodyguards behind her. Congratulations, you've already been chosen by the old man to become one of the trillions of cute girls here. Just wait for the old man to befriend you. This afternoon, as he chatted with old Bob, he listened to the notifications of the transcendent Holy Grail ringing in his ears from time to time. His mind was analyzing the information, and the true secrets of the Transient Sea were slowly unraveling in front of him like a scroll. The last time he came here, Qin Guang did not have the time to think so much. He was only thinking about how to survive for half a year. Moreover, his realm was too low at that time. He was only at the level of seeing spirit sky, so the transcendent Holy Grail would not reveal too much information to him. This time, he finally saw through the mysteries of this world as a genuine one-line sky realm cultivator. Apart from that, he finally met another condition after learning so many secrets. The second notification appeared on the mission screen, which made him heave a sigh of relief. Learning 4,978 languages did not require him to memorize them by himself like he did in the past. That was simply too difficult and nonsensical. Instead, there was another way of thinking. There were as many as 5,000 foreign languages, and many of them could not be recorded by computers. Humans could not learn them, and they were super minority languages that were about to be lost on Earth. At the very least, only a few dozen people knew them. If Chen Guang were to learn them like English word by word, sentence by sentence, it would be nonsense. Back then, he could only learn English in the Transient Sea thanks to the 9-year compulsory education system. Otherwise, it would have been a waste. The mission he faced this time was too difficult, too profound, and too deceptive. Therefore, the considerate Transcendent Holy Grail launched a special service. Devil Juice Series. First, he would spend 10 million faith points to exchange for a legendary devil juice extractor. Using this devil juice extractor, he would be able to produce a cup of fresh and delicious devil juice by spending another 600,000 faith points. As long as he could make someone drink this devil juice extractor willingly, Chen Guang would be able to obtain the other party's language ability. Of course, this was very difficult. Although Chen Guang was known as the second officer of the Royal, he was very clear that his personal strength was at most in the top 10,000 of the Transient Sea. If he were to jump around arrogantly and drink juice whenever he saw someone, it was very likely that he would end up being chopped into pieces by some big shots on Treasure Island. He was not afraid of death. After all, he could still resurrect. However, this resurrection would not reset, and his enemy was still there. He was afraid of dying again, 100 times in a row. Therefore, Chen Guang set his sights on another item that appeared on the mission screen, the divination ball worth 6 million faith points. This divination ball sounded like a piece of black technology, but it was actually just a communication device that could directly connect to the projection screen in the Cloud City in the outside world. Using this divination ball, under the premise of paying 10,000 faith points per minute, he could see any place in the Transient Sea. There was no place that he couldn't go. But here came the problem. Previously, when he had just broken through to One Line Sky, Chen Guang used the projection screen to peep on Annie bathing in Cloud City. Calculating with his fingers, Annie should have been around 60 or 70 years old at that time. His face turned green. "You're an old monster. 60 or 70 years old, but you still look like a 30-year-old plump woman. I've really been fooled by you. Forget it, don't think about those useless things." Chen Guang clapped his hands. Here comes the idea. He opened a divination house and used the divination ball to divine for people. He specialized in searching for people and items. Then, in the name of black witchcraft, those who wanted to divine for him had to willingly consume the devil's juice. The price was that they would lose their ability to speak. In the real world, this kind of fraudulent business would not have any business. But this was the Transient Sea, a place where the strong preyed on the weak. This was the Transient Sea that contained countless treasures. Undying rank experts were not eternal. In the long history, there would always be undying rank experts who, due to various reasons, would lose their ability and qualifications to retain their memories during a rebirth. It could be that their power was taken away after they were defeated, or they could have done something that caused the gods to despise them and lose their qualifications. It could also be that too many rebirths diluted their memories of when they first became strong, or it could be that they were too unlucky. The reason was not important. The important thing was that these people would have to start from the beginning again after they were reborn. For example, there was an invincible overlord who once ruled the Eastern Sea region for 3,000 years. He had so many treasures that it made people's hair stand on end, but his paranoia made it so that he was the only one in his pirate crew who knew where the treasures were hidden. One time, this overlord very arrogantly ran to Middle-earth continent alone and slept with the king's daughter. The king paid the price of 2,000 soldiers' lives to capture him, but his pirate crew did not choose to save him and instead betrayed him. This overlord was executed with a smile. When he was executed, he said very arrogantly, "I will make a comeback. You want my treasures? Dream on." But in the end, he did not return and disappeared in the long river of history, just like many pirate kings who were as powerful as him in the past. It was said that his treasures were hidden in an even deeper sea region outside of the Eastern Sea region. He once revealed the name of that sea region to his subordinates. He called that place the Myriad Sea. This overlord's name was Gorger Roger. Even now, thousands of years had passed, and there were still many pirates who set off from the various seas, diving into the boundless outer realm sea in search of the illusory Myriad Peak Sea, all for the sake of obtaining Roger's enormous wealth that was beyond everyone's imagination. In short, the history of the Transient Sea was too long, and the treasures that were lost in the depths of the sea were too many. The few continents with Middle-earth continent as the head also had their own legends. The numerous floating islands also had their own stories. Even Earth had a mysterious sea region like Bermuda that surpassed mankind's modern technological wisdom, let alone the transient sea which was countless times larger. The mysteriousness and greatness of the sea was fully displayed in the transient sea. So, Qin Guang had reason to believe that his divination house would definitely prosper. Doing things in the name of the not uncommon black witchcraft was not considered ostentatious. One must know that in the transient sea, there were countless black witchcraft that was more vicious than taking away one's ability to speak. Compared to others, Qin Guang's was simply too gentle. So now that everything was ready, he only lacked the faith points. Everything was perfect, but looking at the 387,465 faith points that had not increased at all since he entered, he was completely dumbfounded. The juicer required a total of 10 million, producing a cup of juice required 600,000, the divination ball required 6 million, and maintaining the divination cost 10,000 per minute. The existing 390,000 faith points could only be exchanged for some gold berries in the transient sea. What's the use of it? No matter how one looked at it, he was adorable. Just as he was about to curse, suddenly, his faith points shot up a little. He waved his hand disinterestedly. A day in the real world was equivalent to a year in the momentary sea. Now that he was squatting here, he would earn about 100 points of faith every day. That would be about 50,000 points of income every year. After some calculations, it was not bad. As long as he stayed in the transient sea for 62,000 years, he would be able to survive after 170 years in the outside world. Not bad, my ass. 62,000 years. I'm going to call the police. Police uncle, save me, I've been kidnapped by the heavenly Holy Grail, it wants to lock me up for 62,000 years. This is not the same as the previous few times when my mind was locked up in the transient sea for 62,000 years. Today I feel very normal at every moment, alright? If I were to live like an old monster in a treasure island for so many years, I would feel terrible. Just thinking about it makes me want to light a fire and burn myself to ashes, alright? How sick do I have to be to live for 62,000 years? Chapter 496. At this time, the Transcendence Holy Grail's notification came. Due to the uniqueness of this mission, the Savior's time in the outside world is at a complete standstill. Qin Guang's tears flowed down his face. Alright, he doesn't need to see his own epitaph the moment he opens his eyes. Wait a minute. Since the outside world is at a complete standstill, why the hell did I suddenly gain a bit of faith? This doesn't make sense at all. Suddenly, a familiar figure appeared in his mind. It was a one-eyed, one-armed, one-handed woman standing on her ship and shouting at her crew. It was Lung Qin and her Radiance pirates who had inexplicably barged into the Sea of Moments. That's right, this bit of faith was given by her. Thanks to the Heavenly Holy Grail's data query function, Qin Guang checked back for 3 days. Just as he had expected, the faith output had been extremely stable over the past few days, with 1 point every day. Qin Guang clapped his hands. I'm also stupid. If the people outside can give me faith, then the people in the Sea of Moments should be able to as well. To be honest, with the population of the Sea of Moments and the technological level of the Middle Ages, if they could incite fanatical worship, why would they need to worry about faith? Thinking of this, he looked up some of the most basic parameters from the mission description screen. Only then did he realize that some of the data he had guessed based on common sense was wrong. Mission world name, Sea of Moments mission details, Master 4,978 languages world total population, about 178 billion mission completion, 0 realm of the fleeting sea mission completed, 1 mission completed name, English learning. The population of this world was much more than he had imagined. This was because his activities were mainly concentrated in the Jade Sea and he had never been to other places. Apart from this, he didn't know that his flower tea had actually turned into several continents. At that time, the Enroyal was only the king of the Jade Sea. It was still a far cry from its current position of being one of the 12 ocean emperors of the 5 seas. Seeing the population, Qin Guang's eyes narrowed into slits. On Earth, his influence was mainly concentrated in his own country. Now, he could get about 50,000 faith points a day, and the population here was more than 100 times that of China. He was going to be rich. Pushing the door open with a bang, Qin Guang grabbed the collar of old Bob, who was squatting outside in a daze, and quickly walked to the Purple Rose bar outside the slums. There was a piano there. Old Bob, do you appreciate the piano? Old Bob's neck was painful. Mr. Wright. Wait, the door isn't closed yet. Don't talk nonsense. Is there anything worth stealing from that broken house of yours? I asked you if you know how to appreciate the piano. Old Bob looked at the front door with a pained expression. Mr. Wright, are you talking about the magnificent performances of those bards? I felt that it must have been the most melodious sound I had ever heard. Unfortunately, the guests in the bars of Treasure Island were too noble. We couldn't get in like this. In all these years, Purple Rose had only found a bard who could play the piano once. I heard that in order to have him play a song, the lady boss paid 3,000 gold berries and slept with the bard for free for half a year. I was lucky enough to be there. Oh, it was so much better than the ragged voices of men quarreling. Qin Guang's footsteps froze. It can't be? People who can play the piano are so respected? Old Bob nodded. Of course. In the entire Sea of Transient, the rarest people are musicians. They are even rarer than undying warriors. Is it that difficult to learn the piano? Old Bob shook his head, then nodded. I don't know if it's difficult or not, but every bard treasures his craft. They'd rather take their tunes to hell than teach them to others. No one left behind music scores? Isn't that bard a little too selfish? Qin Guang was puzzled. Old Bob was at a loss. Music scores? Butter cookies? What's that? Can they be eaten? If you talk nonsense with me again, I'll wring your neck. Old Bob was innocent. I really have never heard of music scores. Besides, bard is a profession that can communicate with God. Although this profession isn't strong in combat, it is easy for them to give birth to undying souls. Of course they wouldn't easily teach their skills to others. Nonsense. Isn't it just playing the piano? Is it as miraculous as you say? Qin Guang was dumbfounded. An outstanding bard can play the sounds of nature. After a long period of slaughter, pirates naturally need to be influenced by the music of a bard that is like the sounds of nature. Only in this way can people forget the pain of being in a precarious situation. Only in this way can people obtain a short period of tranquility after the slaughter and training, and comprehend the true meaning of being stronger. It is said that there was once a pirate from the North Sea who advanced into hockey when a great master, musician Brooke, one of the 12 ocean emperors, played it. Pooh! Qin Guang felt that he was about to collapse. Ever since he entered the Sea of Transient for the second time, he had been hearing Bob talk about mysterious powers, black magic, dark wizards, undying warriors and the like. He didn't think too much about it before. At most, he felt that those powerful pirate lords were like the ones depicted in the movie Pirates of the Caribbean, possessing all sorts of supernatural powers. This should be a world where witchcraft and magic was the main focus. After all, when he was roaming the Jade Sea with Enroyal, he had never seen such powers. He had only occasionally heard from and that some pirates outside the Jade Sea possessed terrifying magic and were extremely powerful. Only now did he finally understand that the Jade Sea was too remote. To the entire Sea of Transient, it was a beginner's village. The contestants had yet to change their professions and didn't know how vast the outside world was. When he first heard about Blackbeard teach, he was only momentarily surprised. After all, this character in Pirates of the Caribbean, or even in the history of pirates in the real world, was a legendary character that couldn't be avoided. He personally created Jack Sparrow, which made him firmly believe that the entire pirate world in the Sea of Transient should be based on the movie Pirates of the Caribbean that he had seen in his mind. It wasn't until later when he heard about Gore's Roger and the 10,000 Peak Sea that he subconsciously felt that something was wrong. However, he deliberately avoided that thought in his heart. He felt that his Sea of Moments shouldn't have such a miraculous method of opening, and that perhaps he could still save it. Now, when he suddenly heard the word hockey, he immediately felt that his whole body wasn't good. Hockey? Say it again? I didn't hear you clearly. He probed. This time it was Bob's turn to express his surprise. My God. The great Right Chin, the legendary second mate, actually doesn't know hockey. That's right, only a true expert can possess hockey. This is almost the same as an undying warrior. You didn't even know what an undying warrior was before. Qin Guang facepalmed. All right, I'll accept my fate. I finally understand this time. Indeed, when the transcending Holy Grail constructed the Sea of Transient, it was indeed based on the Pirates of the Caribbean that he had watched not long ago. However, there was another unavoidable mountain in the pirate theme, the One Piece anime that was popular all over the world. When he was young and ignorant, he was also deeply attracted by this anime and it left a deep impression in his mind. It was just that in the past 2 years he was busy earning money and he was getting older, so he didn't really like anime anymore. That was why he had forgotten about it. However, it still remained in his heart. Therefore, this Sea of Transient was equivalent to the combination of Pirates of the Caribbean and One Piece. There was black magic, the fountain of youth, and also hockey. However, there wasn't any devil fruit that could break the balance. Alright, now that the old man himself is going to bring in the devil fruit juice, I'm really thankful that it's not a fruit. Apart from that, because of the Sea of Transient's sealed nature, when the transcending Holy Grail constructed this world from nothing, the two memories related to pirates mixed together and produced a miraculous chemical reaction. This also formed the unique characteristic of the Sea of Transient that an undying warrior possessed an undying soul. The realm in a cup constructed by the eighth heaven of immortals was indeed terrifying. Unlike other shrunken ponds, this was basically a huge and complete world. Moreover, from the moment it was created, it could continue existing on its own. Lazuli didn't lie back then. The Sea of Transient had already formed its own world. I'm actually a super complicated otaku that's a mixture of 2 and 3 dimensions. The dimensional barrier was broken, and in the end I turned into this thing that's neither Chinese nor foreign, and it's even fully formed. I'm really sorry, Transcending Holy Grail, it's really been hard on you. He couldn't help but think of Luffy in the real world. I'm really thankful that there's no rubber fruit Luffy in this world. Seeing that the bar was getting closer and closer, Qin finally calmed down and instructed, "Oh right Bob, when we reach Purple Rose remember not to mention that I'm the second mate of Annie. Just call me Right and say that I don't have a surname, got it?" Bob didn't know why, but he knew that he shouldn't ask too many questions. "All right, Mr. Right. Then may I ask what you're going to do in the bar? We can't afford a cup of the worst quality beer anymore." Qin grinned. "I'm going to play the piano." "What? You're actually a bard?" Bob's eyes widened. Qin laughed. "I don't know how good the bard music in this world is, but I can only tell you that there's absolutely no one who can compete with me in playing the piano. Now old Bob, since you like it and know a little, you'd better adjust your frame of mind and get ready to adore me at your best. You'll become my second fan in the Sea of Transient. Follow me honestly and I'll make you immortal." "I almost believed you, Mr. Right. Come to think of it, fan? What's that? This time I can eat it, right?" Scram. "A fan is someone who especially admires me. Sir, even if you don't know how to play the piano just based on your name, you're still my idol." No, this is different. Alright Bob, do you know the Radiance Pirates?" Qin suddenly remembered this matter. Poor Bob, he was so scared that he peed his pants again. Chapter 497. My Mr. Right. Do you have a fetish for powerful female captains? Qin paused. He was about to reach the Purple Rose Bar. Why? The Radiance Pirates have been around for 25 years. They are rising like a comet, unstoppable. They are now one of the top 50 powers in the entire Sea of Time. Their captains, Lady Cord and Annie, are known as the 2 most powerful women in the Sea of Time. Many people even think that in a few years, the Radiance Pirates will replace one of the 12 Poseidons. For the first time in history, there will be 2 women among the 12 Poseidons of the Sea of Time. Everyone knows that the reason why Lady Cord can't break through the shackles of the 12 Poseidons is because she only has 1 hand, 1 leg and 1 eye. But once she is reborn, no one will be able to stop her. Qin expressed his astonishment. This is going against the heavens. *CK. He held onto the bar's door. Bob, go in first. Tell any of your old friends in the bar that I want to use their piano. I need to sit for a while and calm down. No matter what, whether it was Annie or Lung Qin, he had to find a way to contact one of them. Any one of them would be able to protect him. Who would have thought that the old man would have to rely on a woman to protect him in his own world? Forget it. Let's not think about that for now. Annie and Lung Qin were already at the top of the pyramid in the Sea of Time. Old Bob didn't even dare to mention Annie's name in private. He had just arrived and was unfamiliar with the place. He probably wouldn't be able to contact them for a while. Let's see if the people of the Sea of Time could give him faith first. The Purple Rose Bar was located at the junction of Bell Street. It was a small 2-story building that covered an area of about 300 to 400 square meters. The first floor was the bar's lobby, and the second floor was filled with the wretched transactions that the people of the Sea of Time loved to see. This bar was located at the border of the slums, and its positioning wasn't very high-end. Those who would come here to spend money were either lower-class residents of Treasure Island, such as people like Old Bob, or most of them were foreign pirates. People with taste would go to the wealthy area in the city center to spend money. As soon as Qin pushed the door open, he smelled a strange odor. It was very unique, as if the body odor of dozens of men who had never taken a bath had been mixed together. However, the strong smell of alcohol had neutralized the stench. There was also the fragrance of roasted chicken, duck, and goose dripping with hot oil. The hall was very lively. Bare-chested, bronze-skinned men gathered in groups of 2s and 3s. Sometimes they would laugh and drink with each other. Sometimes they would arm wrestle with each other on the wooden tables of the bar. The loser would be dejected, and the winner would clamor that they had to buy him a drink. Otherwise, if they met someone with great strength, the only loser would be the bar table. At this time, the waitresses in the bar would stand in front of the group of men with a tearful expression and pitifully ask them to pay. Among the 70 or 80 guests here, there weren't any elegant people. They were all dressed differently. Some wore animal skins, some wore close-fitting brown leather armor, and some wore neat linen clothes. Most of them were bare-chested. In the large hall, the most elegantly dressed person was probably the bartender behind the counter. He was wearing a black vest and a white shirt. The tall bartender was pouring cocktails one after another with dazzling movements. Bob, on the other hand, was arguing with a young blonde in a lace dress behind him. He seemed to be very agitated. Qin Guang walked over. "Mr. Wright, this is Janet, the current owner of the Purple Rose. She doesn't agree with you using the piano." Old Bob himself did not believe in his heart that this Mr. Wright could play the pianoforte, but it had to be done. Qin Guang turned to look at Janet. This girl was roughly 15 or 16 with a well-developed figure. It was just that her face was covered in freckles that ruined her beauty. At the same time, she had a stubborn look on her face. "Sir, I don't know you and I've never heard of you. My mother, who passed away last month, spent a lot of money to buy this piano. Although it hasn't been played for several years, I can't let an unknown person put his hand on it. What if it's damaged?" Janet said stubbornly. Old Bob's face darkened. "Janet, do you know who you're talking to? You'll bring disaster to yourself and your bar." Qin Guang waved his hand. "All right, old Bob, shut up. Miss Janet, how much is this piano worth?" "You're Mr. Wright, right? Do you want to buy my piano?" 30,000 gold berries. Janet put up 3 fingers. Old Bob sprang to his feet. "Nonsense. 30,000 is brand new, but the dust on your piano can be used to build walls. It's been here for 10 years. Janet was neither servile nor overbearing. "But in these 10 years it's only been played once, hasn't it? Uncle Bob, you're a regular customer of Purple Rose. You know best. Although it's old, it's also very new. Actually, I don't want to sell it. This is the memory my mother left me. You know how much my mother paid to have it played once. Here's 30,000 gold berries. I'm not buying it. I just need it to be played a few times. If you really break it, this money is my compensation to you. Otherwise, consider it a gift from me." Suddenly, Qin Guang took out a big sack from his back and threw it at Janet. The sack contained a total of 300 gold coins, each equivalent to 100 gold berries. *CK. "Mr. Wright, where did you get the money?" Bob felt like he was about to collapse. He'd been eating so much for the past few days. He didn't even give a dime the whole time. Suddenly throwing out 30,000 gold berries was really sad. Qin Guang grinned and patted the old man on the shoulder. "Bob, you have to understand that no amount of money can buy eternal immortality. Think about my former crew and captain. I wasn't sure before, but now I can tell you clearly that this is indeed my credit. You know." The 30,000 gold berries was directly exchanged with his faith points. The price was lower than he imagined. It only cost 300 faith points. It seemed that his existing nearly 390,000 faith points were enough for him to squander for many years. "Okay, sir, but when you go back tonight, can you first buy a dining table? It's detrimental to your noble status to squat on the floor and eat." Qin Guang ignored him. He had already climbed up the stairs and sat in front of the piano on the high platform in the corner of the hall. This fully handmade piano was actually not as shabby as old Bob said. Although it couldn't find anyone to play, whether it was the former owner who had passed away or Janet who had just taken over the heavy responsibility, they actually valued it very much. There were people taking care of it every day, and the surface of the piano looked smooth and shiny. "Hey, who is this guy? Is he going to play the piano?" "Don't talk nonsense. Why would a bard come here? Shorty, get down here. Don't disturb our drinking or I'll cut you into 8 pieces." As soon as Qin Guang sat down and rolled up his sleeves, many men below had already started to make a ruckus. For the bars near the slums, the appearance of every bard was a big deal. Even the noblest gold and silver bar in the center of the city could only find a bard to play twice a month on average. A few years ago when there was a concert in Purple Rose, it was even advertised 3 months in advance. On that day the entire street was filled with poor people who heard the news. Janet held the bag in her hand with a complicated expression, but she had no chance to regret it. Before Qin Guang played the first note, even Bob, who had accompanied him here, didn't believe that he could really play the piano. However, it only took Qin Guang 5 seconds to conquer the ears of these country bumpkins. When the first note of canon wandered in the bar, the noisy crowd instantly fell silent. Everyone's mouths were wide open. They couldn't believe their eyes, let alone their ears. This was really an amazing, talented bard. They had never heard this song before, but it was so beautiful. Everyone seemed to be surrounded by countless elf-like notes. They even had hallucinations of seeing elves cheering and jumping around them. The ethereal sound of the piano shook the hearts of these pirates, who usually only knew how to kill and drink blood. It was as if they had returned to their youth, returning to the naivety and ignorance before they set foot on the sea. What a beautiful sound. The crisp sound of the piano seemed to be hitting the softest ribs in the depths of these people's hearts. Bob's hands were clenched, his heart was beating fast, and his eyes were full of disbelief. He was even more shocked than when he had confirmed Qin Guang's identity for the first time. Oh my God, I've spent so many days with a noble bard. Yes, he had almost forgotten that Qin Guang was the second mate of the En Royal, because a bard was so rare. Janet's hands clasped her chest tightly, her heart beating with the notes. Is this the magic of a bard? Why is my heart beating so fast? Why is my face so red? Why do my eyes seem to see a sky full of stars? The hot-tempered drunkards put down the wine glasses in their hands and turned their heads at the same time. They looked at the performer on the stage with reverence and confusion. It was the bard who seemed to have descended from the sky. They even subconsciously held their breaths, afraid to disturb this person. Qin Guang had only used one song to conquer the men and women in the bar. When the music stopped, the bar was silent. Some people even turned their faces away and gently wiped away the tears in their red eyes. Qin Guang put his hands away and looked around. He was also shocked by the situation below. My God, is this necessary? Although this is the divine song canon, isn't your reaction a little too intense? That bald-bearded man. I see that you're big and burly, and your body is comparable to Shark O'Neill's. What do you mean by pulling the tablecloth and wiping away your tears while listening to a piano? Also, little girl, please don't take off your clothes while approaching me, please be more reserved. Previously, Qin Guang thought that old Bob was bragging, recklessly raising the bard's status in the pugilistic world. But when he really performed a song, he realized that old Bob might have been wrong. A miracle. This is an incredible miracle. I am Buldev, the vicious wolf from the northern sea. I have roamed the 5 seas for 300 years, but I have never heard such beautiful music. Sir, you remind me of Sir Brooke's elegant demeanor. In the corner of the hall, a man dressed in the most luxurious clothes was the first to react. He stood up abruptly and clapped wildly with a flushed face. This was actually an undying rank expert. Previously, he had only brought his men to the corner to drink quietly, as if he had no intention of revealing his identity. However, Qin Guang's song canon made this man so excited that he introduced himself, just to make Qin Guang look at him and nod his head in approval. Soon after, the pirates stood up one by one, crazily cheering and screaming. Yes, the previous Qin Guang was unknown, but without a doubt, just based on the song he had just played, he was destined to become a great bard. Mr. Right. My God. My Lord. My God. Please forgive my previous presumptuousness, please continue to let me be your follower. Old Bob pounced over and laid his head under the piano. Qin Guang took off his shoes and threw them down, hitting Bob's head. Idiot. Get up. Don't embarrass me. At this moment he saw a wisp of white smoke rising from Bob's head and flying towards him. Daily production of 2 points of faith. Success. There's hope. Not only Bob, in the huge bar at least a few people had white smoke rising from their heads. It was the faith that Qin Guang urgently needed. Although the total production of faith from these people might not reach 10 points per day, it was already enough. Qin Guang just wanted to verify this matter today. Apart from that, he had only played one piece. Although they all recognized his talent, but just like what Buldev said before, in this world, there was still a musician as powerful as Brooke. Only a country bumpkin, who had never seen a bardic performance, or someone like Bob who had been brainwashed by him many times, would recognize him as the strongest in the world after just a short piece. For example, Buldev, although his face was full of worship and his mood couldn't be faked, he didn't provide any faith. Qin Guang wasn't in a hurry. He waved his hand and pointed to the other men who had given him faith and said, Janet, give each of these friends a glass of rum. It's my treat. Bob pointed to himself. Mr. What about me? Shut up. At this moment, Qin Guang threw the other shoe down. He stood up barefooted, pressed his hands down, and made a gesture for everyone to be quiet. Then he said, "Hello everyone, my name is Wright and I am the most talented bard in the world. Please remember this sentence and in 4 hours, you will repeat this sentence to everyone you meet." Baldev seemed to want to refute, but in the end he didn't dare to open his mouth. He just sat down unwillingly. Obviously, Brooke's position in his heart was very high. Qin Guang was also paying attention to him. He thought, "Young man, don't worry, you'll soon know whether I'm bragging or not." To Alice, Autumn Whisper, Croatian Rhapsody, Moonlight Song, Swan Lake. In just one afternoon, these classic songs from the hands of a master in the hands of Qin Guang, the most powerful pianist in history, a humanoid piano player, fell from the sky and appeared in front of these people's ears. Every single one of them had never appeared in the Sea of Moments before, but every single one of them was so moving. Baldev's mood changed from worship at the very beginning to doubt Brooke, and finally to trembling all over and madly worshipping Brooke. It only took an entire afternoon for this to happen. 4 hours later, Baldev slowly got up, his right hand gradually turned black, and a burst of black gas came out from it. His armament hockey has advanced. The Purple Rose Bar was packed to the brim with hundreds of people. They were filled with admiration and speechlessness. They are worshipping the strong Baldev, and they are worshipping Mr. Wright, who is sitting on the high platform and playing the movement of God. That's all for today's performance. Thank you for your support. Qin Guang got up and took a deep breath. Hundreds of faith points turned into mist and gushed out from the forehead of each of the hundreds of people present. 1,000 points a day. When he thought of the 178 billion people in the world of the Sea of Moments, Qin Guang was overwhelmed by this sudden happiness. I'm not dreaming, am I? It seems that the bards in the Sea of Moments are very popular. If he can get each person in the Sea of Moments to provide an average of 1 point of faith points, it will be a total of 178 billion. The flow of time in the Sea of Moments and the real world is about 365 to 1. After he goes out, will he become rich in a second? Oh no, become rich in a second? Wishful thinking, you can still sleep. Ruri's voice came at an untimely time. She came to pour cold water on him. Qin Guang was unhappy. Why? What? Isn't it all faith points? Ruri smirked. When you play Dota or World of Warcraft, can the gold coins you earn in the game be used to buy a computer? Qin Guang, no. Isn't that it? The Sea of Moments is just one of the 3,000 lower planes of the Holy Grail, which is one level lower than the real world. The faith points you earn here, isn't it the same as the gold coins you earn in the game? Is it hard to understand? Qin Guang facepalmed. I understand the logic, but my heart still hurts. Something isn't right. Lung Qin's faith points are different. I've also noticed that person. She's not a native of the temporal ocean. Her soul is fundamentally different from the souls of the people in the temporal ocean. They can't be mentioned in the same breath. It was rare for Luli to explain. When I found out the truth, my tears fell. I really have no fighting spirit now. Qin Guang was a little bored. Ruri consoled, don't be too desperate. If you can complete the test of the Sea of Moments in the real world and create a statue, I have a way to make use of the faith points here. When you played World of Warcraft, you could buy a 45 renminbi card with 3,000 gold coins. Isn't that the same logic? Qin Guang was overjoyed. That's great. 178 billion divided by. Don't count, it's not that much. It's very difficult to convert. The levels of the planes are very strict. Even if it's only one level difference, it's a world of difference. Based on my guess, by the time you build a statue, you'll at most get 10,000 a day. Ruri had been pouring cold water on him for decades. Qin Guang was satisfied. All right, it's actually not bad. Chapter 498. The next day, the Purple Rose Bar announced its closure, disappointing many pirates and music fans who came after hearing the news. Yesterday's incident happened in a hurry, but when Qin Guang played the second half of the song, the people on Treasure Island, whether noble or lowly, began to rush over. However, the Purple Rose Bar was only so big. After squeezing 800 people inside, there was almost no place to stay. The latecomers, even the noble and powerful immortal rank pirates, could only wait outside the door bitterly, trying to get the Purple Rose Bar to open the window so that they could listen to the music coming from the window. If it was another place, how could these brave and ruthless pirates be so obedient? Even if it was just a matter of going to the toilet, they would draw their swords against each other. However, it was rumored that there was an unprecedentedly powerful bard sitting inside, so they didn't dare to act rashly. Usually, the strength of a bard was judged by the movement that the bard mastered. After all, except for a small number of strong dual cultivators such as Brook, the bard's combat strength was not very good, but no one dared to look down on them. Just like yesterday's Buldev the Vicious Wolf. Although it was well known that he increased his haki on the spot while enjoying the movement, it was still very rare. Being able to make others stronger would earn the respect of the world. There were even many powerful pirates who had been helped by the bard and regarded him as their own sole teacher. The truly terrifying thing about a bard was that behind him stood countless powerful pirates who had been helped by him. If there was no irreconcilable hatred, no one would be willing to offend a bard. After a night of brewing, the news spread throughout Treasure Island. So many people came to the door of the Purple Rose Bar early today. However, the bar was closed. More and more people gathered outside and everyone was very anxious. They were afraid that it would be like yesterday, that there would be no seats if they went in late. Finally, everyone elected someone to knock on the door. The one elected was the deputy captain of the Treasure Island Guards, Gale. He was close to the previous lady boss of the Purple Rose Bar, Janet's mother. There were even rumors that he was Janet's father. Although he never admitted it, it was indeed Gale who took care of the Purple Rose Bar all these years. Janet's mother was able to maintain such a bar on Treasure Island as a woman. "Janet, I'm your Uncle Gale, open the door." Gale carefully knocked on the wooden door. After a short while, Janet opened the door and welcomed Gale in. She then bowed to the people waiting outside and said, "Janet apologizes to everyone for making everyone wait outside for so long. Please don't worry, Mr. Wright has already purchased Purple Rose. The store needs a few days of renovation and will reopen in a few days. Welcome to Wright's Bar. I'm your manager, Janet." The little girl made a mischievous expression, and the crowd outside immediately burst into thunderous cheers. The reason why they rushed here was that they were afraid that Bard Wright would leave after yesterday's performance. After all, everyone knew that Bard Wright was unrestrained, mysterious, and had a high status. She didn't expect him to buy this bar and change it to his own name. What did this mean? This meant that Mr. Wright would be performing here in the future. At this time, Qin Guang also walked out and the people outside became even more excited. "He's Mr. Wright. Mr. Wright. I'm Abood from West Blue. Please let me listen to your music. I'm willing to pay 10,000 gold berries. Mr. Wright, please let me be your follower. I have observation haki. I'm Mary from the Bloody Mary bar in the city. Mr. Wright, please come to my bar and play a show. I'm willing to serve you for a year." Everyone shouted loudly and subconsciously began to crowd forward. "Mr. Wright, do you need me to stop them?" Baldev gritted his teeth and moved his sturdy body forward. After one night, Baldev, the North Sea Vicious Wolf, has given up his identity as the leader of the Vicious Wolf Pirates and chose to stay in Purple Rose, stay with Qin Guang, and become a follower of Qin Guang. Although he had a rough appearance just like his nickname Vicious Wolf, he had keen insight. Baldev knows very well that as long as Mr. Wright is willing to take him in and serve him, there will be many opportunities to listen to his performance. Sooner or later, under his influence, he will be able to comprehend the legendary Haoshiku haki. Qin Guang raised his hand slightly with a calm expression and pressed it down. "Everyone don't quarrel. Be quiet, please be quiet." Although his voice was very light, his words carried enormous weight. The noisy crowd quieted down in an instant. The change was so fast that Qin Guang himself was surprised. But he quickly adjusted his mood and put a warm smile on his face. "Hello everyone, I'm Wright, the owner of the Wright Bar. As many of you can imagine, I'm tired of being homeless and traveling. Now, I want to stop my pursuit of truth and share with you the philosophy of life that I've learned from the sun, the tides, the storms, the quiet and serene night sky, the sunny noon, and the endless beautiful scenery." There was no need to prepare a draft when bragging. Bob, who was hiding behind him, muttered, "Mr. Wright really knows how to brag, he's at most 100 years old." "Oh Bob, what did you say?" Baldev next to him asked. Bob's eyes widened. "Baldev. I'm Mr. Wright's first follower. You have to call me Mr. Bob." "Okay, little Bob." Bob was furious, but there was nothing he could do. With Baldev's age as an undead rank expert, calling him little Bob really wasn't inappropriate. Qin Guang didn't have time to care about what the two people behind him were whispering about, but continued to maintain his noble, elegant, mysterious, and imposing appearance. Sure enough, the crowd outside was moved by his saintly appearance. Heavens! How poetic! Mr. Wright has actually lived for thousands of years? Who would have thought that there would be such a great and almost immortal bard above the sea? silently comprehending life and now so generously helping others, you are simply the second sun that always shines in the sky. Just like your name, your brilliance will illuminate the entire transient sea. Almighty right. Generous right. Light of the treasure island. Qin Guang's face was about to burst from smiling. He hadn't even started work yet, but the 1 to 2,000 people below were already sending letters of admiration. What innocent and adorable people, what pure faith, I really love you guys to death, my honest little friends. However, I can't let everyone come here for nothing. Bob, Baldeff, find a few more people and break down the wall for me. I want to play the song Blue Danube River. Qin Guang shook his windbreaker, turned around and walked back. Baldeff, go. Bob shrunk back. You are an undead rank expert, my old arms and legs can't handle it. Bang. The mud wall beside the piano was smashed by Baldeff's iron fist, revealing the piano inside. Half of Bob's body was thrown to the side of the piano. Baldeff, you idiot. Be gentle. Don't hurt this noble piano. This is a divine artifact that Mr. Wright touched before. Qin Guang and Baldeff looked at Bob, simultaneously having the urge to strangle him to death. A song Blue Danube River, dedicated to everyone. The forever noisy slum district had never experienced such a moment of peace. Although the sound was faint, it resounded through every corner of the street. Even Gale, who had a high status as the vice-captain of the guards, was sitting cross-legged on the street floor like a beggar. At this moment, regardless of whether it was an undead rank expert, a homeless person with tattered clothes, or a noble from Middle Continent, they were all so quiet and serene. As the notes surged, a sparkling river slowly flowed through everyone's heart. They recalled the innocence of their childhood and lamented the impermanence of life. 10 minutes later, Qin Guang stood up from the piano and lightly bowed to the audience. After a moment of silence, the crowd burst into thunderous cheers. A white mist with more than 2,000 faith points emerged in everyone's mind. The lady boss of Bloody Mary Bar, Mary, even gave Qin Guang close to 5 points of faith. Her bar often invited wandering poets, and she clearly understood how great Qin Guang was. From this moment on, the name of the Light of Treasure Island, Right, resounded throughout the island, accompanied by the sails and swords of the pirates, spreading to every corner of the Sea of Time. 15 days later, the renovated Wright's Bar reopened. In fact, Qin Guang only spent 300,000 gold berries and 3,000 faith points to obtain the ownership of Wright's Bar. In the beginning, Bob suggested moving the bar to the center of the city, but Qin Guang rejected that foolish suggestion. Don't look down on Purple Rose's port just because it wasn't a great place, but it was a medium-sized plaza that could accommodate 2,000 people. On the treasure island with a diameter of only 10 kilometers, it was not an exaggeration to say that every inch of land was worth its weight in gold. Walking through the entire treasure island, one would not be able to find a bigger square than the Purple Roses Street. What Qin Guang cared about was not the lowliness and nobility of the audience, he even hoped that his audience were all poor people. In this sea of time where the weak are prey to the strong, the lower the weak, the more they desire to obtain stronger power, and the more they are willing to sell their souls for strength. It was much easier to get these people to give faith points than to get those rich nobles to submit. What he wanted was the number of people in the audience. The reason why he wanted to break that wall was because Qin Guang wanted more people outside to hear his performance. This was a legendary afternoon. A total of 30 Guqin songs, including City in the Sky, Walk in the Rain, Wild Bee Dance, Mark of the Rain, Pathétique, and other famous songs with different styles, gave thousands of listeners inside and outside Wright's Bar a godlike experience. In the long history of the Sea of Moments, there had never been a wandering bard like Qin Guang, playing for 4 hours in one go. Furthermore, every piece was different, and they had never heard of any of them before. But they were all so perfect and pleasant to the ear. Baldev was even more excited and trembling. As an audience of Qin Guang's last 4-hour concert, he can be 100% sure that the song played by Mr. Wright this time is completely different from the last time. In this afternoon, 4 undead rank powerhouses sitting in Wright's Bar advanced hockey. Among the thousands of listeners outside, 3 or 4 people comprehended observation hockey on the spot. Qin Guang used this public concert to conquer the entire Treasure Island, becoming the veritable Light of Treasure Island. Sir, there are a total of 139 girls registered here, eager to get your favor. I have used the aesthetic standards I learned from you to conduct a preliminary selection of them, leaving only 8 real beauties. Do you think I should let them come over? Qin Guang was overjoyed. Old Bob, am I a shoemaker? After a while Qin Guang asked. Old Bob was at a loss. No, you are a bard. But I don't remember teaching you how to choose a shoemaker? Are you blind? Is this my aesthetic standard? Did you learn the aesthetic standard of my feet? Qin Guang sent that fellow flying with a kick. Chapter 499. From the day of its birth, Wright's bar was destined to be extraordinary. This should be the first bar on Treasure Island founded by a bard, or perhaps the first bar in the entire Sea of Time. In the long history of the Sea of Time, few bards were willing to stay in the same place for a long time. For anyone living in the sea symbolizes freedom, symbolizes inexhaustible inspiration and wealth. Every person in this world with a dream is eager to conquer the sea. In ancient times, Poseidon, the overlord of the 5 seas, Magellan, the overlord of the Central Sea in the Middle Ages, and Gol Roger, the overlord of the East Sea in modern times. Every legendary hero sprinkled their legends in every inch of the sea. Even if they have disappeared, their stories are still remembered by the world. Even now, 10,000 years have passed, Magellan's statue still stands in the legendary garden in the center of Treasure Island. One after another, young pirates chasing their dreams devoutly pray in front of the statue, and will set foot on the boundless sea with Magellan's guidance. Freedom is glory. Conquer and forge glory. This is the eternal theme of the Sea of Time. More than other professions, bard is even more unrestrained. Staying in the same place for a long time, when everything around you begins to become familiar, it will be difficult for bard to find a source of inspiration in life. Only through endless exploration and adventure can one constantly obtain inspiration from the sea, and only then can one become stronger and stronger. One must become stronger in order to obtain an immortal soul. This was the case for pirates who practiced hockey, the same was true for mages who practiced magic and witchcraft, and the same was true for bards who practiced music and creation as their soul. Even a musician as strong as one of the 12 ocean emperors, Brooke, chose to take his own fleet to endlessly shuttle through the entire sea, adventuring on one mysterious floating island after another, challenging undefeatable sea beasts, and searching for treasures hidden in the depths of the sea by predecessors. Ordinary strong people pursue immortality, and immortal strong people pursue eternity. The longer they live, the more they fear that one day they will not be able to be reborn after death. Even the undefeated Gol Roger was submerged in the waves of history, not to mention the fact that none of the 12 ocean emperors alive today can compare to Gol Roger's hegemony. Qin Guang regarded himself as a resident artist in the bar, which was normal for him. But to the pirates of Treasure Island and even the Sea of Moments, they interpreted Qin Guang's actions as great. He gave up on immortality, gave up on becoming stronger, and used his music to cleanse the hearts of others selflessly. His generosity and greatness didn't need to be sung, it would accompany the ceaseless flow of the seawater and sprinkle over every corner of the Sea of Moments. Then again, the reason why Qin Guang's fame rose was because of the world-famous songs that he had stuffed into his brain back in the world of the piano. No matter how hard a poor bard played, it would only be annoying noise. But Mr. Wright was different. Every one of his songs was so beautiful, well-tempered, and flawless. He is the best piano player in history. First, his musical attainment basically stopped at the level of a player. He could only play, not create. It was impossible for him to casually create a beautiful melody on the spot like Beethoven and Mozart. Secondly, his performance was not only accurate, it was not machine-like, but it was better than machine-like. In terms of intonation, perhaps only the intonation of the original composer when he played the whole song for the first time could be exactly the same as his level of cheating through the world in a cup. Third, as a player with a large capacity that would never crash, his storage was abnormal. As long as it was recorded in human history, there was no song that he didn't know, and there was no song that he didn't know. If you asked him to recite the names of the songs one by one, perhaps he wouldn't be able to remember them, but if you asked him to play it, he would have it at his fingertips. The notes and melody didn't need to be memorized at all, it had become an instinct that was engraved in his genes. How much change could a bar bring to the entire Treasure Island? Before Qin Guang appeared, no one would consider this question. However, a year later, when someone suddenly looked back, they realized that the layout of the entire Treasure Island had unknowingly changed. Although Treasure Island was a circulation island famous for trading, most of the pirate forces or representatives of the aristocratic families of Middle-earth who were in power on the island lived in the central area of the floating island. Starting from the wealthy area and the aristocratic area in the center, it was the large trading area, the slum area, the flea market area, and even the dock area for unloading and loading goods. Wright's bar was located at the intersection of the slum area and the flea market area on the west side of the island. In this short period of a year, whether it was the representatives of the aristocrats or the people in charge of the pirate forces, they had unknowingly moved their residences near Wright's Bar. In particular, the two small buildings near Wright's Bar had been inflated to sky-high prices. One of them was bought by a representative of the top 50 strong forces in the Sea of Moments, and the other was bought by the son of a duke in Middle-earth. It was said that the duke had already set off for Treasure Island and would arrive in 2 years. This meant that Wright's Bar had forcibly changed the urban structure of Treasure Island, turning this West City district into a wealthy area. Regarding this change, although Qin Guang was not very willing, it did not affect him too much, so he just let it be. During this year he did not even take the initiative to recruit anyone, but his Wright's Bar grew rapidly and irresistibly. After the first month, his bar was guarded by 3 undying rank powerhouses, including Buldev, and no one tried to make trouble in his bar. Buldev became his first undying rank follower. A year later, the undying rank powerhouse who had only mastered observation hockey could only work as a waiter in his bar. There was once a pirate leader who boasted of being one of the top 100 pirate groups in the Sea of Moments and tried to kidnap Qin Guang. As a result, before he could get close, he was knocked down to the ground by an undying rank powerhouse wearing a modern bar security uniform designed by Qin Guang according to his memory and sent him to reincarnation. In addition, there were no less than 10 bards who were highly respected in the outside world who came to his bar to be apprentices. Qin Guang did not have much music theory to teach, so he simply taught this group of people how to use a staff and then gave each of them a piece of music score. Now, of these 10 bards, 3 were part-time bartenders, 3 were helping to cut vegetables in the kitchen, and the other 4 who learned better were allowed to play on stage when Qin Guang was lazy and spread the glory of their mentor, Mr. Wright. About 11 months ago, Qin Guang had found a way to find someone to send out a message. There were 2 letters, one to Annie and the other to Lung Qin. However, the Sea of Moments was too big, and now that a year had passed, he did not know if the 2 had received it. Old Bob's beauty contest plan had never stopped, but his aesthetic sense seemed to be incurable. Qin Guang also had a crooked idea at first. Since old Bob could not be counted on, he planned to find some sweetness himself. Although there were almost only blonde European girls on Treasure Island, it was not that there was no one who met his aesthetic sense, and the other party seemed to be very interested. Finally, he was about to succeed. However, just as he gritted his teeth and was about to go into battle because he was too excited, he tripped on his feet and could not step on the bed. Instead, he slipped and fell to the ground. At that time, it was not easy for him to carefully select and search the entire Treasure Island for girls of the right age. Finally, he found a pure virgin girl whose appearance met his aesthetic standards. She climbed down from the bed in a panic and was about to help him onto the bed, but in the end she saw the shocking hole on the iron floor. The size and thickness of the hole were exactly the same as his mortal weapon. Coupled with the flying sawdust that resembled a disaster scene, Bob, who was eating mashed potatoes downstairs, cursed through the circular hole. "Who's so wicked to make a hole upstairs?" Next to him, Buldev reminded, "Little Bob, above you is Mr. Wright's bedroom." A short and suppressed cry of alarm came from downstairs, and then there was the sound of someone running away in a hurry. The 18-year-old girl first looked at the hole, then looked at Qin Guang, and in an instant understood everything. She then covered her mouth and cried bitterly, "Mr. Wright, please let me go. I don't want to die." Qin Guang sighed and admitted defeat. Being too strong is really a kind of trouble. He actually wanted to explain to the girl that although the scene she saw was terrible, she was soft and the board was hard. As long as he controlled it well, no one would die. But the girl cried so miserably that he felt as if he had really committed a big crime, so he simply let her go. Little did he know that this was releasing a tiger back to the mountain. After one night, Mr. Wright's fearsomeness in one respect spread as rapidly as his talents spread throughout Treasure Island, and then throughout the Sea of Moments. If you don't have the strength of an undead, don't try to challenge Mr. Wright in bed. Even if you are a man. He can even break swords. He can even split seawater. I heard that Wright's bar lacked a hammer when it was renovated. It was Mr. Wright who personally made the stage. Don't ask me how he knocked the nail in. Without armament hockey, it will be easily smashed by him. Except for the strong with Haoshiku hockey, no one can survive under Mr. Wright's whip. Are you talking about Annie? Don't talk nonsense. People will die. Rumors are so terrible that in the sea of time where all the information is passed on by word of mouth or by letter, Qin Guang didn't even have a chance to hold a press conference to clarify. Later, the girl who was let go even ran back and knelt down to apologize. She said that she didn't add anything to the outside world and just slightly disclosed the matter to her best friend. For this kind of thing, I only told you this, you must not pass it on to others. As a result, the next day it was known to the world. Qin Guang has long been numb. He didn't blame the girl much and he just accepted his bad luck. Although his brother is now famous and he is known as the Light of Treasure Island, after all, he is a good man who is not willing to force others. Yes, this is called not forgetting the original intention. Isn't it just a woman with Haushakuhaki? Any come on. So, in such a horse waiting, he has been in the Sea of Time for a year. Today may be just an ordinary day for others, but for Qin Guang, it is particularly memorable. Because from today onwards, his second business, Right Divination House, can finally open. He had been busy for an entire year, insisting on performing on stage for 4 hours every day, constantly spreading his fame. With Treasure Island as his foundation, he had dominated the middle sea of Transient Sea's music industry. He had constantly instilled the concept that he was the best, that he was the strongest wandering bard. Finally, a year later he had collected 6 million faith points. He locked himself in the office, first took a bath, fasted and prayed, then began to work on the light screen. Come on. I want the devil juicer. Come on. I want the divination ball. Looking at the two things in front of him, he was a little confused. Then the question is, why does the devil juice juicer, a specialty of the Sea of Time, look so familiar? It even came with a packaging. There is even an advertising slogan on the packaging. 9 Suns Juicer, fresh every drop. Damn it. Also, the divination ball in my memory isn't like this, it should be a crystal ball the size of a palm. Why is there a monocular in front of me? There is also a packaging. Be careful. Damn it to the quadratic power. Just as he was in a daze, Bob pushed open the door and entered. Mr. Wright. Not good. Brooks' fleet is on the way to Treasure Island, and will arrive tomorrow. I heard that he is here to challenge you. He has a lot of opinions about you, often proclaiming that you are the #1 bard of the Sea of Time. Qin Guang slapped the seat and stood up. Damn it to the quadratic power. The bard Wright's boastful words somehow reached the ears of the musician Brooke. In fact, Qin Guang already knew that his arrogance was likely to arouse the dissatisfaction of some of his peers, but after personally listening to his music, most of the bards near Treasure Island chose to worship him on the spot, a small number chose to set sail, and most of them chose to stay on Treasure Island and become his fans after being rejected on the spot. Perhaps later on, the super strong bards standing at the top of the Sea of Time would dare to challenge His Majesty. The musician Brooke is one of the best. Mr. Wright, do we need to run? Old Bob asked. Qin Guang stared. Why should we run? If he wants to challenge me, then come. Do you think I will lose? Bob was shocked. Mr. Wright, can you win? Bob, do you know what I admire most about you? Qin Guang restrained his anger and said with a fake smile. Bob said without hesitation. Sir, you must think that I am smart and can always solve problems for you. Qin Guang shook his head. No, if I met a pig when I first came to Treasure Island, then the current deputy general manager of Wright's Bar would be a pig. Oh sir, it really hurts me to say that, but I am still your most loyal servant. Old Bob turned around and walked out carrying a big bag on his back. It turned out that this guy had already packed up his belongings before coming in to inform Brooke. Bob, you're back. Qin Guang waved. Leave your bag with me, then go out and prepare to spread the news. Tell others that I, Wright, accept Brooke's challenge. Bob made a bitter face. Sir, this is just the clothes I just ordered for you. Qin Guang said, your clothes can emit golden light. Chapter 500. After driving away the idiot Bob, Qin Guang was alone in the room, carefully checking his faith value. He had been running the right bar for a whole year. In the beginning, his faith value skyrocketed. Almost every day after his performance, his faith value would increase by 1,000 to 3,000 points. But now a whole year had passed. Although there were people coming and going on Treasure Island, and there were people arriving and leaving every day, the growth of his faith value had inevitably stagnated. Just by listening to the pirates who had listened to his performance, others would forget it after hearing it. It was difficult to gain unforgettable recognition and generate new faith value. Therefore he felt that he now lacked an effective way to spread his music. He only hated himself for not being a technological geek, otherwise he would have developed a phonograph to make records. Unfortunately, he studied environmental protection and was engaged in water pollution control. This world is full of fresh water and it has a little jasmine tea taste, okay? My ass. Otherwise, How cool would it be to be a technological geek in my own world and engage in technological advancement? In the eyes of Bob and others, Brooks' challenge may be a crisis, but in Qin Guang's heart he didn't think so at all. This was a great opportunity for him. If he could openly defeat Brooke in an open challenge, he would be able to convince the super musicians who had been recognized by the entire Sea of Time. Then, before a new genius appeared, he would undoubtedly become the #1 bard of the Sea of Time in everyone's hearts. Those who had only heard of his name, but had never seen his skills, might be able to send him a little faith value. As for how to challenge his piano skills, Qin Guang, who had been a pianist for countless years with the identity of 1900, said that there was no pressure. Therefore, tomorrow he would first subdue Brooke, and then the current production of nearly 600,000 faith value per day should rise, right? If the business of the divination house was good, perhaps it would only take a few days to complete the learning of 4,978 languages. Wait a minute. Qin Guang suddenly realized something. What he had to face was not only the common English, French, German, Japanese, Korean, and Spanish on Earth, but also the various indigenous languages that were about to be lost. At least in the case of Treasure Island, where he was now, he had asked old Bob to do a census of the people who came and went. So far, there were hundreds of pirates who had appeared on Treasure Island, and perhaps there were more than 100 corresponding languages. However, the official language of the instantaneous sea was still English. At first, it was very easy and pleasant for him to keep learning new languages, but gradually, as the languages he needed to learn became more and more obscure, it was very likely that he would not be able to find anyone who knew these obscure languages even if he had demon juice. Although the population of the Sea of Time was as high as 178 billion, as long as one's efforts paid off, coupled with the divination ball search function, they should be able to find people. But the Sea of Moments was too big. Even if they knew where he was, they might have to wait for many years to bring him over. Tens of millions of kilometers in a minute, okay? For example, if some unlucky race with a rare language was living on a certain floating island near the border of the Sea of Moments, how were they supposed to bring them over? Although most of the population of the Sea of Moments was concentrated in the 5 seas, everyone knew that the seas outside the 5 seas were the most mysterious and boundless. For example, the Wampy Sea of Gorger Roger. It seemed like no one could find it now. Qin Guang expressed that he was starting to panic. He felt that the setting of the Heavenly Holy Grail was very unreasonable. It was simply a scam. Lori, come out and save me. Qin Guang shouted in his heart. Lu Li cursed in her heart unhappily. What? I'm busy. You should know what I was thinking just now, right? Give me an idea. I'm now locked up in Treasure Island and can't move. What if some remote Hebrew language is on the side of the cup? Qin Guang said anxiously. Lori chuckled. Don't worry, when your daily production of faith reaches 100 billion a day, you will find some surprises. Let me give you a small tip. You can't leave Treasure Island, but isn't Treasure Island a floating island? Qin Guang instantly understood. You mean I can pay the faith points to drag Treasure Island away? Lori nodded. That's about it. Why is it 100 billion a day? That's F***king expensive. Our price system is collapsing so badly. Qin Guang protested. If the Heavenly Holy Grail is a game developer with the price system collapsing like this, it would become a ghost in 3 days. Lori chuckled. You can understand it this way, the game developer's concept is very good. But you neglected one thing, the Heavenly Holy Grail is a single-player game, you are the only player, the entire game, the entire world is to serve you. To be more accurate, including the realm of Transient Sea, all the test worlds exist to train you. Even if the Transient Sea has already become its own world and self-proclaimed system, when you enter, the Heavenly Holy Grail will still make slight adjustments to certain things under the precondition that the realm of Transient Sea is stable, to ensure that your training and tests are in line with the Heavenly Holy Grail's original intentions. This way, don't you feel that you have a special sense of existence, that you are especially respected? Otherwise, how can there be such an easy thing in this world, that you can get something without paying? Qin Guang fiercely slammed the table. Your family's slight adjustments go from tens of thousands to hundreds of billions. Which idiot designed this Heavenly Holy Grail? Is there a hole in his brain? Such an indecent endless god world's 10 great god equipment, it's simply degrading. Lori, he well scolded. I really want to curse that bastard to death. Qin Guang laid on the chair and pretended to be a zombie. Seeing his face that was filled with nothing to live for, truly pitiful, Lori showed a rare kindness. Alright, don't complain, there are some words that I don't want to say to you too clearly, but you have to understand it yourself. Letting you stay in the transient sea for a long time is something that the heavenly Holy Grail deduced after precise calculations that it must do. Don't you feel that, as the wielder of a supreme god equipment, as the savior of this empress, your temperament is too weak? Letting you experience the various states of the world here, experiencing life, this is the Holy Grail's test for you and also a form of nurturing. In the past, it would seal your heart every time, making you waste away your time. This time, when you return to the transient sea, it is a chance for you to transform yourself, to be reborn. Qin Guang waved his hand helplessly. I understand the logic, but this matter is too deliberate, it's very stupid, alright? Not letting you stay for 62,000 years is already a great kindness. Accept your fate, don't look for me for help, because this is something that even I can't decide. Remember, in your long life, how to see through the mysteries without forgetting your original intention. This is especially important for you. You have to understand, the transient sea is only one of the 3,000 worlds. Right now you are only facing the test of the one line of heavens, the days are still long. Qin Guang didn't want to talk to Lori anymore and threw a lump of snot at her. Outside there was also a fellow who had nothing to live for. Seeing Bob come out with a bitter face, Baldev came over and asked, Little Bob, what is Mr. Wright's attitude? Are we going to start a war with Mr. Brooke? I have just talked with many experts on the island, although everyone is willing to pledge their lives to follow Sir, but even if we join forces we still can't resist Sir Brooke. The power of the Sea Emperor is too strong, it's not something we can imagine. Bob glanced at Baldev, he stared affectionately at this bearded brother. After a long time he softly said, Baldev, after I die, can I be buried together with you? Baldev stared at him. Has the situation become so serious? Bob shook his head. Oh no, I was just thinking if I can stay in the same grave as the immortal strong, maybe when you resurrect you will remember to take my soul with you so that we will be twin brothers in our next life. At that time, you must remember to let our parents name me Bob, and tell me the story of my life from an early age. Baldev, I am very reluctant to part with you. If possible, please don't let my soul dissipate like dew in the morning under the sun. Baldev, well, if you also have a soul I will try my best, but it is also possible that we will be twins. Bob, it is also possible that we will be deformed with two heads, so that we can learn the cannibal magic that requires two heads to chant at the same time. The Light of Treasure Island, Wright, had announced that he had accepted the musician Brooks' challenge. This earth-shattering news swept through the entire Treasure Island in a flash. Under the feet of the seagulls and geese, it quickly spread to every corner of the Central Sea. This incident happened so suddenly that it caught everyone off guard. A year ago, Sir Brooke was still on the periphery of the South Sea looking for the location of the Sea of Music and Murex Sea. No one knew what kind of powerful magic he used to make his ship cross nearly 10 million kilometers in just 1 year to arrive at Treasure Island. In the understanding of many people, even at this time, Brooke should not have heard of the name of Wright. Qin Guang himself was also pondering over this matter. He felt that perhaps Brooke had some means of spreading information that he did not know of. Silver Sparrow sighting. Since the other side issued the challenge first, of course he had to add some stakes to make it interesting, otherwise he would be putting himself too low. On his side, he intended to write 10 pieces of music as stakes. As for Brooke, Qin Guang's territory could be considered, so he first put out the music pieces and let the other side see the dish on the plate. After all, for Qin Guang the music pieces were worthless, but for the genuine bard Brooke, who pursued the highest realm of art, it was a priceless treasure. This is called cross-border business, or smuggling for short. Huge profits need not be explained. At this time, above the distant East Sea, Brooke put down the colorful shell in his hand and fell into contemplation. After a long time, this skinny as a match, wearing a huge curly-brimmed hat, the #1 bard of the Sea of Time sighed softly, but did not speak. Next to him, a young man dressed in aristocratic clothing slightly bowed. Sir Brooke, this subordinate thinks that, with your status, challenging a bard who has just become famous for less than a year, it is detrimental to your dignity. I think his wording is inappropriate, and he has the intention of humiliating you. Brooke turned his head to look at the young man. Watson, you don't understand, a bard is different from an ordinary pirate who cultivates hockey. The higher a bard stands, the less he can see the direction of the future, unable to find the goal of cultivation. I have been stuck in this realm for 2,000 years, dying and coming back to life again and again, causing my memory to gradually blur. If I can't go further, perhaps the next time I sleep, I will disappear forever. Watson's mood became agitated. No. Impossible. Mr. Brooke, you are the greatest bard. How could you disappear? Brooke was somewhat disappointed and frustrated. Young Watson, Do you know who my captain is? What? Sir Brooke, you also have a captain? It was obviously the first time that Watson heard this secret. Brooke nodded. Yes, my captain is the only great overlord of the sea who has defeated the central government. He is the only pirate king recognized by everyone after Gol Roger. His name is Luffy. What? Sir Brooke, you are actually a crew member of that ship. Watson has been following Brooke for 1,000 years, but it was the first time that he heard him talk about the past. Yes, we found the Wampy Sea together with the Shawnee. We have the world's greatest pirate king, the greatest swordsman, the greatest chef, the greatest navigator, the greatest archaeologist, the greatest doctor, the greatest mechanic, and the stupidest sniper. We have done things that others can never imagine. When we found Gol Roger's treasure, my companions chose to drive the Shawnee deeper into the endless sea. My captain wanted to see the end of the Sea of Time. I was going to go too, but they told me to stay. They knew that they probably wouldn't come back. They thought that I should leave my talent in the 5 seas and use my music to create more excellent pirates for this world. Watson slammed the table. He was going crazy. My God. Gol Roger's treasure. Mr. Brooke, I really didn't think that you... What kind of treasure is that? That's a letter, nothing else. Brooke's tone became deep. What did the letter say? Watson's breathing almost stopped. The atmosphere in the cabin became incomparably heavy in an instant. Brooke raised his head slightly and looked at the window, as if he was afraid that the wall had ears. The letter said that the owner of the Eternal Hand is alive. The legend of the Eternal Hand and the invisible wall at the end of the Sea of Time has been circulating in this world for far too many years, so long that if it wasn't mentioned, it would be almost forgotten. But with just a little bit of information, everyone in the Sea of Time knows about it. This is the most basic common sense, just like how there are 24 hours in a day. After the day passes, it is night. Brooke's simple words revealed an infinite amount of information. Since the owner of the Eternal Hand is alive, it means that the entire Sea of Time is simply a cage. The entire world isn't even as big as his hand. We are just playthings in other people's hands. Just by imagining this scene in his mind, he could understand how depressed and painful Gol Roger, who had already stood at the top of the world, was when he discovered this secret. This is the biggest secret of the Sea of Time. In order to find this secret, Gol Roger spent 10,000 years of his life. In hundreds of reincarnations, he traveled through the 5 seas, went through countless difficulties and dangers, went deep into the sea, defeated one sea emperor-level monster after another, explored one mysterious ruin after another, tore open the deep sea with his formidable strength, went down to the bottom of the sea and communicated with the merfolk on those huge seabed continents that made people despair. He walked step by step on the footprints left by the great sages like Poseidon and Magellan, and then used his unparalleled knowledge and wisdom to decipher the mystery and deduce this conclusion that he didn't dare to believe but had no choice but to believe. Discovering this secret turned the great overlord of the sea into a decadent old man. He didn't even dare to say it, he didn't dare to let his crew know even the slightest bit. He only dared to write it in a letter and bury it in the deep sea. Even if he lost the love and respect of his crew, he didn't care. Because he knew that if he simply said it, it would only make people think that he was a stupid madman. Therefore, before he died, he told a big lie, telling people that his treasure was hidden in the Sea of 10,000 Peaks, making the younger generation crazy, and setting off the great pirate era. Only treasures obtained after risking everything will be cherished, only this kind of words will be believed. In the end, Gol Roger suddenly lost the right to be immortal because he had almost seen through the true secrets of the realm of the transient sea. He even wanted to reveal the secrets to the public, so he was punished by the realm of the transient sea and his immortal soul was taken away. No, impossible. Even if these words came from the mouth of his most respected Mr. Brooke, Watson still felt it was hard to believe. Brooke smiled. See, even if I say it, Watson, you still doubt it. We were also like this. Even if this letter was left by Mr. Gol Roger, it still made us lose our minds for many years. So Captain Luffy and the others chose to continue to the deep sea? Even if they knew they couldn't come back? Just to see the hand of eternity? It took Watson 15 minutes to calm down a little and asked again. Brooke nodded. Yes. Therefore I must challenge right. I have waited for such an opponent for thousands of years, and I can't hold on any longer. The best result is that I can break through the shackles of the present in the fight with him, and become the strongest bard that has never appeared in the entire history of the Sea of Time. The worst result may be nothing, then I will choose to pass on Roger's letter and my everything to him, hoping that after I die he can pass on this secret, and cultivate a powerful pirate king that surpasses Luffy, surpasses Roger, surpasses Magellan, surpasses Poseidon, and breaks this endless cage. Let us obtain true freedom. Mr. Brooke, Watson, who has a lifespan of 1300 years and a young body, cried like a child. At this time Brooke and Watson didn't know that the owner of the Hand of Eternity was waiting for him on Treasure Island, and with a face full of expectation, he was shaking the 10 pieces of music he had just written in his hand, wanting to obtain the means to transmit the message, the sound transmission shell that he had just used to communicate with others. Chapter 501. In the early morning, Treasure Island was filled with coolness, and the white fog shrouded the entire island. Many people had already come out of their rooms in advance and arrived at the Western District, occupying the advantageous terrain early on. There was no scramble for seats. Everyone knew that if one's status and strength did not reach a certain level, one would not have the face to enter Wright's Bar and sit down. A year had passed, and Wright's Bar had already become one of the most famous landmarks on Treasure Island and even in the entire Central Sea region. Being able to walk in, find a corner to sit down, and order a glass of wine that was not expensive was a symbol of status and value. If it were not for the sufficiently spacious street outside the bar, perhaps the poor people would not have the opportunity to listen to the divine music at all. It was said that the bar manager, Janet, had planned to purchase a nearby block and turn the entire large area into a grand theater. She almost succeeded. Most of the houses near the street corner were purchased by her under Mr. Wright's name, but in the end, the theater wasn't built. Instead, most of the buildings were flattened and turned into a medium-sized square that could accommodate 10,000 people. It was said that this was Mr. Wright's intention. At that time, his original words were as follows: "Music and art, regardless of high or low, regardless of high or low, music performed in a cage-like theater has no soul. Only unrestrained music can obtain eternity in the sea breeze." Therefore, on the bustling trading island of Treasure Island, the newly built Wright Square had become the most unique scenery. Every day from 1 to 5 o'clock in the afternoon, the huge square would become completely silent, and only the ethereal and gorgeous music would resound throughout the square. However, even if such a huge square had been expanded, it would still be full of people when Qingguang played every day without exception. Usually it was extremely difficult to find a seat in the square, let alone today. People put on their best clothes and went out early. The sun had only risen halfway, but the huge square was already crowded with people. Not only that, but the streets further away were also crowded with people who had nowhere to go. The street vendors were much more diligent than usual, shouting and selling goods and breakfast that had been rushed through the night last night. Even the 4 trading halls on Treasure Island that never closed for business had chosen to close for the day. This was because none of the natives of Treasure Island who worked in the trading hall were willing to work at all. All of them had applied for leave to go to Wright Square. A festive atmosphere filled Treasure Island. In just one night, the resident population of Treasure Island, which was about 600,000 to 700,000, doubled. Everyone who could arrive within one day tried their best to come from all over the Central Sea region. It was rumored that the leaders of the Central Sea, in order to arrive within one day, had even used powerful black magic to arrive within one day. At this time, it was said that they would arrive before noon. In addition to the 3 captains who were originally on Treasure Island, among the top 100 pirate forces in the Sea of Moments, 7 more had rushed over overnight, and the leaders of 8 other forces were on the way. Without exception, in order to rush over as quickly as possible, they had all paid a heavy price, just to witness with their own eyes the contest between musician Brooke, one of the 12 Sea Emperors, and Wright. The competition between bards was actually not uncommon. Unlike the fierce competition between pirates, the competition between bards was mainly focused on performance skills or poetry creation. Basically, no lives would be lost in the competition. On the contrary, they could gain new insights through mutual exchanges and collisions. This was also one of the ways that bards in the transient sea who were close in level to improve themselves. It was just that from the very beginning when Qingguang appeared on Treasure Island, he appeared to be too strong, so much so that no matter how envious, jealous, or hateful they were, they dared not challenge him lightly. On the contrary, most of them came to learn from him. Originally, these people did not have any hope of becoming his disciple. After all, there had never been a bard who was generous enough to pass on his skills. Moreover, how could the bard's skills be passed on? Even if they remembered the sequence of all the keys, they could not remember the rhythm between each note. It was not until 10 of them had successfully become Qingguang's disciples that they saw a musical score for the first time. At that time, Qingguang also expressed his astonishment. He had a dumbfounded look on his face and was puzzled. The transient sea had tens of thousands of years of history, so why couldn't they even invent a musical score? But later on he also understood that in a sense before he came here for the first time, the entire transient sea did not exist. Its previous history was a fictional reality created by the Cup realm when it created the world. To Qin Guang the history of the transient sea was fictional, but to the people of the transient sea it was real. It was actually very simple to explain why they did not have a musical score. It was because Qin Guang did not understand this thing at all. He did not have this concept in his mind at all. He had forgotten about it when the heavenly Holy Grail was creating the world. Sometimes being carefree was a very happy thing. At this time, no matter how excited the people outside were, Qin Guang himself was sleeping soundly. After making the first cup of devil juice last night, he did not stay idle. He spent the whole night training 2 of his 10 disciples, Shauna and Celalin. The scene at that time was like this. Teacher, why can't I wear clothes when I play the piano? You can wear clothes when you play outside, but when you study with me, every inch of your skin must be exposed to the air. This way, every pore of your body is breathing, and you will be able to experience the artistic aura emitted by your teacher's body. Yes, teacher, but why do David and the others wear clothes when studying with you? Because their realm is too low, so they temporarily cannot experience my precious artistic aura. Shauna, when you play, spread your legs a little wider, use your strength to breathe, use your heart to feel. That's right, that's it. Teacher, your pants are torn. It's okay, I also need to breathe. Teacher, the piano collapsed. It's okay, buy a new one tomorrow. Crack. Teacher, my elbow is broken. This time something happened. After a moment of chaos, Qin Guang and Celalin carried the accidentally injured Shauna back to the room. Qin Guang said, actually when I was teaching I accidentally touched her elbow. I really didn't mean it. If he had a choice he would rather all of his disciples be beauties. Unfortunately, his heart was higher than the sky and his life was thinner than paper. After so many choices he could only find these 2 girls. Shauna's appearance was pure, and she was 70 to 80% similar to the Hollywood star Emma Watson in his memory. Celalin was more charming, and she looked very much like Scarlett Johansson. As for how talented these 2 were in the piano, Qin Guang said that he had no idea. His own music theory was 0, so he had no right to evaluate other people's talent. The reason he chose them as his disciples was very simple. Appearance was justice. As for the other 8 male disciples, Qin Guang felt that he could not only accept female disciples, otherwise it would be too obvious and damage his image. Therefore, after eliminating more than 90% of the people who came to learn from him, he kept these 8 men. There were 2 reasons for choosing them. First, they were to make up the numbers, and second, they were ugly enough. If the world knew that Mr. Wright's standards for accepting disciples were like this, who knew how many of his fans would have their dreams shattered? Of course, as a modern person with a thick skin, Qin Guang definitely could not let people find out that there was something fishy about him. You are the disciples that I have chosen. 1 in 10,000. If you can inherit even a 10,000th of my talent, you will become the legends of the Sea of Moments. Do you remember? This is the staff. This is the greatest treasure I have left for the Sea of Moments. From today onwards, the bards of the Sea of Moments will completely change their current situation of thinking alone. Instead, they will be able to record their own inspiration using the staff and pass it down. When Qin Guang accepted disciples, he said this to the 10 people below the stage who were looking at him with admiration. I am satisfied with your talent, but you must remember, only those with the most sincere hearts can become the greatest bards. Therefore, I absolutely forbid the love between apprentices. Once discovered, they will be expelled immediately. The 10 people looked at him with even more admiration. If you want to understand the true meaning of art through love, you can only love me. The eyes of the 10 people seemed to have stars. What a great teacher. Don't look at me like that. In my hometown, same-sex love is not accepted. Finally, when the noon bell rang, a huge ship hanging a huge pirate flag suddenly appeared outside the port of Treasure Island. Brooke had arrived. The people who had been waiting here for a long time cheered in unison. The reputation that Brooke had accumulated for many years was not an undeserved reputation. Unlike Qin Guang, who rose rapidly like a comet, Brooke had used his dedication day after day, year after year, to win the respect of every pirate in the Sea of Moments. His strength was tyrannical, yet he was humble, courteous, and generous. Even the royal family of the Central Earth government, who had arrived earlier than Brooke, chose to stay at the port and wait for Brooke's arrival. Qin Guang originally didn't intend to come, but he really couldn't resist Bob's tearful pleading. Mr. Wright, I'm begging you, go take a look, even if it's to show a little bit of basic respect so that if we lose... No, of course we won't lose. You are the most powerful bard. Brooke crossed 2 seas to listen to your teachings, and the great you took the initiative to go to the port to welcome him. Regardless of victory or defeat, this will surely become a legend. Sir, think about it. Tens of thousands of years later, there will be such a story circulating in the Sea of Moments. It was a sunny noon, and the greatest bard in history, Mr. Wright, and the second greatest bard, Lord Brooke, met for the first time on Treasure Island, opening a new chapter in the history of the Sea of Moments. How about it? Don't you feel excited just thinking about it? Although today's Bob was no longer the destitute intelligence merchant of the past, and was also a respected figure on the island, his eloquence hadn't fallen, and his flattery had become even more exquisite. Qin Guang was also pleased with the flattery. There's still a bit of truth to it, let's go. But when he really stood at the forefront of the port, looking at the huge pirate ship that was more than 10 feet tall, not inferior to the Titanic cruise ship, he still received a great shock. What shocked him wasn't the size of the ship, but the very familiar pirate flag on it. The skull on the flag made his consciousness pass through the barrier of the plane in an instant. It was as if he had returned to the time when he was still a primary school student, squatting at home with Zhu Jifa and a group of people. They were filled with anticipation as they inserted the CDs they rented from the video store into the VCD player of Bobugeo. It was a scorching hot summer, and a dozen of his friends squeezed together in a room without air conditioning. Although they were sweating profusely from the heat, their eyes were shining as they watched the TV, unwilling to even blink. They were touched by Luffy's persistence, shed tears because of Zoro's strength, cupped their hearts because of Chopper's cuteness, laughed at Sanji's curly eyebrows, peeked at Nami's perky breasts like thieves, and almost got into a fight over who had a better figure between Nami and Robin. Time flew and youth was gone, never to return to that day. He once thought that Luffy didn't exist in this world, but when he saw the pirate flag, Qin Guang felt as if his memory had been devoured. It was a grinning skull wearing a straw hat with a red rim. It was the pirate flag of the Straw Hat Pirates. At this moment, Qin Guang's nose instantly turned sour. Crossing the barrier between two worlds had dealt a heavy blow to his heart. Mr. Wright, what's wrong? Buldev, who was behind Qin Guang, noticed that Qin Guang's shoulders were trembling. Qin Guang rubbed his eyes. No, nothing. By the way, Bob, was there a pirate named Luffy in this world? Qin Guang asked Bob. Bob carefully thought for a long time, then said, Sir, you really asked the right person. Only the well-informed Bob can answer your question. Nearly 2,000 years ago, there was indeed such a great pirate group. If they hadn't suddenly disappeared, Captain Luffy might have become the greatest king of the sea after Gol Roger. But the sea is forgetful. Although Luffy was powerful, he disappeared too abruptly and didn't leave any treasures behind. No one sang praises of his glory, so he was gradually forgotten. But the older generation of Neptune all know of him. Can his body grow longer? Is he a rubber man? Did he eat rubber fruits? Even though he knew it was impossible, Qin Guang still couldn't help but ask. Rubber fruits? What's that? Nothing, pretend I didn't ask. Finally, the giant ship stopped completely, and a small boat was put down from the side of the giant ship. It had no sails, but it moved quickly on the sea like a water snake. A hearty laugh came from the boat far away. Oh ha! I finally meet you, Mr. Wright. A tall but thin figure suddenly appeared in front of Qin Guang. Qin Guang looked up at the man. His eyes were deep, his eyes were almost invisible, his cheekbones were high, and there was almost no flesh. He was so thin that only a bag of skin was left. Skeleton Brook? Where did Luffy go? Qin Guang blurted out. Musician Brook's smiling face froze in an instant, and an invisible momentum emerged from him. The sea behind him shook fiercely, and a pit of hundreds of feet deep and hundreds of feet in diameter suddenly appeared. His Poseidon-class Haushikuhaki was out of control. Chapter 502. With Brook's sudden loss of control, it was as if the entire treasure island had been hit and trembled slightly. He has been in the Sea of Time for a whole year. The most powerful pirate that Qin Guang has seen is only a captain in the top 50 with armament hockey. This is the first time that he has encountered a Sea Emperor-level powerhouse. The earth under his feet trembled, but it was only a slight leakage of Brook's power. Mr. Wright, you are really funny. Brook was silent, and Watson, who was next to him, quickly came forward to ease the atmosphere. Qin Guang is 100% sure that his judgment is not wrong, but this skeleton Brook is deliberately concealing his identity. Perhaps he has other considerations, so he pretended that he didn't mention anything and put a smile on his face again. I write, on behalf of Treasure Island, welcome the arrival of musician Mr. Brooke. Mr. Wright is really polite. Brooke seemed to have recovered, and his skeletal face showed an ugly smile, but it gave people a sense of goodwill. The royal families from the central continent then led their teams to greet Wright Square. After a brief greeting, the group of people, surrounded by the entire Treasure Island people, walked towards Wright Square. Along the way, Brooke was quiet and thoughtful, and Qin Guang was no better than him. But when the two arrived at the square and saw the piano placed in the middle of the square, Brooke's eyes bloomed. Qin Guang turned around and motioned for Brooke to go up first. Mr. Brooke, please. Brooke was a little excited. I remember the last time I came to Treasure Island, it was still a messy slum, but now such a beautiful square has been built. I think this must be the credit of Mr. Wright. Everyone. I just learned that this square is called Wright Square. So I, Brooke, propose to build a statue of Mr. Wright in the middle of the square. How about it? No one thought that before the contest between the two sides had even begun, Brooke had already put forward such a proposal. In the sea of time, statues have a very special meaning. So far, only a few people have left statues for people to admire, even including the statue of Gol Rogers suffering on the execution platform. Although Qin Guang was quite accomplished now, no one had mentioned the matter of the statue because no one had enough weight to speak up. But if these words were spoken by Brooke, one of the 12 strongest sea emperors, then the concept would be different. Brooke's action made the two sides pay respect to Qin Guang before the fight even began. Qin Guang himself felt it the most. Following Brooke's words, his faith value actually soared by thousands. This proved that at least thousands of people present were influenced by Brooke's words and recognized his level in their hearts. He had worked himself to death for 4 hours to be able to influence so many faith points, but Brooke only needed to say a few words. Just as he was about to be modest, Bob suddenly jumped out from the side, worthy of being Mr. Brooke. All my life I, little Bob, have only admired my master, Mr. Wright. Now at last I see you, who are as great as Mr. Wright in my heart. For my master to be recognized by Mr. Brooke, my little Bob's life is worth it. After saying that, this guy actually began to wipe his tears. Not knowing why, Qin Guang felt that he was crying tears of joy. He definitely felt glad that even if he lost, he didn't have to fight to the death. This is too shameful. Qin Guang calmly waved his hand. Baldev came forward and knocked Bob on the back of the head, knocking him unconscious and dragging him to the side. I've let Mr. Brooke see a joke. Qin Guang restrained his thoughts. Although this square is good, the sound of the piano is too low. Although there are a lot of people here and everyone is quiet enough, only the people near the piano can hear the sound. It's really a pity. Brooke waved his hand. Watson, take out all the sound shells we found in the outer sea. Since I took the initiative to challenge you, in order to thank you for your generosity, I will give you these sound shells as a gift. As Watson spoke, he had his attendants open one big box after another. They took out a dozen large shells that were so thick that a person could wrap his arms around them and place them around the square. Finally, Watson put a small shell on the piano, turned around and nodded to Qin Guang and Brooke. It's done. Brooke was about to explain, but Qin Guang raised his hand. Of course he knew that this thing was called a sound shell. He was ecstatic. He had been worrying about how to spread his music. How come he didn't think that since the world of the Sea of Moment was taken from One Piece in Pirates of the Caribbean, then it was reasonable to have those colorful shells. It's just that no one had discovered it before. But for him this was not a problem at all. He was a man with a divination ball. In the Sea of Moment, there was nothing he couldn't find. Although he couldn't leave, sooner or later he could use his influence to let others get it. So, shall we start? Qin Guang asked. Brooke nodded. Since I am the challenger, then let me go first. Qin Guang declined to comment. So far, the bards he had met in the Sea of Moment, although they may have some talent, but no one could compare with him. As a player with the entire music library of all the piano artists on Earth, he was too much of a bully. Brooke's fingers were slender and slender. This was necessary, after all, they were almost skeletons. But his fingers were also very flexible. As he began to play, the sweet music echoed around the square, which was the credit of the sound shells arranged by Watson. These sound shells were collected by the one placed on the piano, and then transmitted to the large sound shells placed in every corner of the square using principles that modern science couldn't explain. It was just like the sound system used in concerts in modern society. When Brooke's song ended, many people in the square, after a brief silence, applauded one after another. In addition, among the tens of thousands of people in the square, there was actually someone who comprehended hockey on the spot. Worthy of standing at the top of this world's bards, the level of his self-created music was absolutely not inferior to the famous masters that had appeared on Earth. Qin Guang was speechless. Bob silently carried the backpack he stole from Qin Guang's office on his shoulder, and then was pressed to the ground by Baldef. "Mr. Wright, please?" Brooke stood up. Qin Guang pondered in his heart. If he were to bring out a classic from the modern era, his performance might only be on par with Qin Guang. Not to mention that Qin Guang was a sea monarch expert. Although Qin Guang didn't deliberately display his aura, it was inevitable that his unique domineering aura would be integrated into his music. Worthy of being the musician Brooke, he was really strong. "If this goes on, I will lose." Bracing himself to sit on the piano, Qin Guang recalled the contest with the jazz master on the Virginia. His mind flashed and he finally thought of an unconventional method. "Although you are very powerful, but I, your brother, am a cheat." He first turned his head to the side and apologetically smiled at Brooke and then said, "I'm sorry." Immediately he began to play. In the blink of an eye, the audience was in an uproar, because the music he played was exactly the same as what Brooke had just played. A perfect copy without any deviation, simply so accurate that it made people feel horrified. The bards of the instantaneous sea, in addition to the 10 songs taught by Qin Guang, all the other songs were their own original compositions. They combined all of their own understanding of art to form a complete song, but they couldn't teach it to others. Now Brooke had just played a song and Qin Guang completely copied it. This was simply beyond people's understanding. Brooke looked at Qin Guang as if he was looking at a monster. When the long song finally ended, he couldn't help but ask, "This? Why is this?" Qin Guang didn't explain to him, just smiled and stood up, gesturing him to continue with an unfathomable look on his face. Although there was no music score, as a player, as a cheat who could cheat by relying on his faith, he only needed to pay tens of thousands of faith points to play back the song that Brooke had just played in his mind. Then, following the sound in his mind, he played it mechanically as if he was playing against a music score. Although his performance was only similar, it lacked the soul of hockey bestowed by Brooke, and couldn't make people advance to hockey on the spot, but as long as the sound was exactly the same, it was scary enough. Bellucci refused to believe it and once again played another of his own tunes. Qin Guang did the same. After going back and forth 9 times, Brooke finally put down his hands. I lost?" Qin Guang wasn't in a hurry to let him admit defeat. He still didn't stand up from the piano but waved his hand and said, "Mr. Brooke, I have my own song here. It won't be too late for you to admit defeat after you listen to it." Immediately, Qin Guang picked up the small sound shell in front of him, which was responsible for collecting music, and loudly said, "Everyone listen. People below the undead level, immediately leave here. Go to a place where you can't hear the sound. This song will kill all of you." The huge square was in an uproar. On Earth there was such a song. Its name was Black Sunday, also known as Melancholy Sunday. It was composed by a self-taught Hungarian musician, Wuxia Charles. In terms of artistic achievements, he was not very high, but he left behind this strange piece of music. According to rumors, countless people chose to commit suicide after listening to the original version of this song. Of course, in modern society, many different versions of Black Sunday could be searched on the internet, but almost no one would do anything irrational after listening to such a song. Many people thought that in the early days of the previous world, when information was not developed, some people overinterpreted this song, exaggerated its magic, and just looked for a gimmick to increase the sales of the record. But there was another theory that the real original version was destroyed as early as 1945 because it was too dark and had a very bad influence. Now that everyone can hear is not the original version, of course, it can't show the true magic of this song. This statement has a certain accuracy. However, in fact, the original vinyl record of this song sold tens of millions of copies around the world, so how could it be completely destroyed? In addition, the so-called music score was in the author's tomb and in a university in the United States, but this is mostly false and can't be confirmed. However, Qin Guang can tell others with certainty that whether it is the original vinyl record or the so-called music score, they are not the real original song. The real original song was played by the original author, Wuxia Charles. On that desperate Sunday, after he had just broken up with his girlfriend, he had a burst of inspiration. He sat alone in front of the piano and played this 47-minute-long song for the first time. This is the real original version. Even the music scores that Wuxia Charles wrote later on had changed quite a bit compared to the inspiration that he had at the beginning. Even the officially released music scores were just one-sided and far-fetched memories. They only had the form but they did not have a real soul. Even Ruren's Charles himself couldn't play anymore, let alone others. But Qingguang can. At this time, what Qingguang is going to play is the inspiration that Rouge Charles captured for the first time when he wrote this song. This was the most monstrous aspect of Qingguang's music player. As long as it existed in the past, he could perform it, even if it is a lost song in a sense. In addition, the realm of transiency is obviously different from the real world. Playing the song here will conform to some unique rules of the transiency. The wandering poets and their music in the realm of transiency have a layer of magic that modern science can't explain. It can even help people to improve their understanding of hockey. Therefore, Qingguang himself is not sure what kind of effect this forbidden song will have on the people in the transiency. Right now, he doesn't want to become a butcher, he just wants to be famous. Letting the undying rank and above experts stay is also because Qingguang speculates that only people who have reached this level can withstand the impact of the song. But how can these ordinary people be willing to leave? This is an unprecedented showdown between the two peak wandering poets in history. Everyone is hesitant and unwilling to leave. Brooke looked at Qingguang's serious expression. Lord Wright, are you serious? Brooke has already admitted defeat in his heart. His speech and expression are also quite respectful. Qingguang nodded. Of course, this song is beyond your imagination. Immediately, Qingguang turned to Bob and the others behind him and said, Bob, Janet, Shauna, Celine, you all also leave here. Bob said, Lord, actually I have a good suggestion. Say it. Qingguang's expression became more and more dignified. In any case, aren't there at most 100 or 200 undying rank experts here? Why don't you let everyone move into the bar, close the door, put away the open-air piano platform, and find some people to guard outside? Let me help you put away the sound shell. Qingguang, what you said makes a lot of sense. Brooke laughed out loud. Qingguang covered his face, his prestige has been swept to the ground. Baldev gave Bob a kick. Little Bob, you should quietly say this kind of thing. Chapter 503. Because of Qingguang's order, no matter how reluctant the ordinary people were, they had no choice but to obediently leave. Qingguang clearly told them that this was not an act, not a joke, and not a boast. Once this piece of music is played, people will really die. By the time he finished all this, an hour had already passed. The sky outside was getting dark, the sun was setting in the west, and the evening sun was shining down from the other side of the sea, but the moon was already high up in the sky. Under the illumination of the sun and the moon at the same time, the sky of Treasure Island was filled with a dusky atmosphere, making people feel gloomy and depressed. Qingguang sat in Wright's bar with a grim expression. Nearly 200 undying rank and above powerhouses were all sitting upright in the bar. Even the central royal families whose strength did not reach the standard were chased out. Outside the bar, dozens of volunteers with their ears plugged tightly surrounded the bar, preventing anyone from approaching. Old Bob stood far away and thought enviously. Although he didn't want to admit it, sometimes he also wished that he could be as strong as Baldev. Qingguang gently drank a mouthful of water and looked around with an extremely grave expression. Mr. Wright, it's done. Brooke, one of the 12 Ocean Emperors, seemed to be subdued by Qingguang's attitude as if he was facing a formidable enemy. He subconsciously lowered his voice and said so. Baldev, check again. You must make sure that no one below undying rank can hear the sound of the piano. I really don't know what kind of consequences this will bring. Qingguang and Brooke nodded and instructed again. Brooke also ordered Watson to walk around again and check whether the doors and windows were tightly closed. After ensuring that everything was foolproof, Qingguang took a deep breath, suddenly stood up and said with some excitement, Everyone, I believe many of you already know how many songs I have played this year. But I can tell you that the song I am going to play today is different. The emotions contained in this song represent the most despairing moment of a person's life. In the process of my performance, perhaps many unexpected things will happen. You will remember the lowest state of mind in your life, and your mind will be greatly shaken. If you can get through this, I believe that this will be an extremely important turning point in your lives. Of course, I didn't really want anyone to die here. So, if I find someone can't hold on any longer, I will stop playing in time. Then at this time, you have to remember that I stopped because of you. It was you who ruined the opportunity for the 200 people here to listen to the complete song. Then you are a sinner. The more Qingguang spoke, the more intense his tone became. There was an extremely fanatical look on his face. With his current status in the Treasure Island and even the momentary sea, no one dared to look down on his solemn attitude. Although Buldev's reputation is not obvious, his strength is close to the Sea Emperor level of armament hockey, and even he is infected by him to the point that he almost stops breathing. Brooke, who was sincerely convinced by him, heavily patted his skeletal chest and said, "Lord, right with me, Brooke here, I will not let this happen. If anything goes wrong, I will throw the person out at the first moment. Everyone, don't blame me for being ruthless. This is also to protect everyone." "Good. Then I'll start." Qin Guang sat down and slowly put his hands on the keys. "Everyone, clean your ears and prepare to listen to the most pessimistic and despairing song in the history of the Momentary Sea." In fact, he didn't need to challenge Black Sunday to be able to defeat Brooke in a sense. However, this wasn't the result Qin Guang wanted. What he wanted was to crush Brooke in an open and above-board manner. He wanted to make Brooke admit his defeat wholeheartedly and take out a song that could make his name resound throughout the entire Momentary Sea from then on. The choice of the original Black Sunday, which is one of the 3 forbidden songs in the history of emotional rendering, is undoubtedly the most appropriate. Even if this is the Momentary Sea because of some special reasons, too deep emotional rendering and touching is a risky and crazy move, which is likely to bring unexpected results, but if you don't lose the child you can't catch the wolf. Qin Guang thinks it's worth it. Take a gamble and turn a bicycle into a motorcycle. As long as he can do it, he can make Brooke completely convinced and let everyone think that he is the most powerful bard in the Momentary Sea. From then on, he won't have to continue to waste time on playing. He just needs to wait for his reputation and sound to spread, and then he can lie down and collect faith value. Then he can devote all his energy to the new business, Right Divination House. Finally, the first note of Black Sunday was played, and the heavy atmosphere in the bar suddenly became darker and gloomier without any warning. Even the air began to thicken, making it difficult for people to breathe. The oil lamp, which was already very dim, swayed even though there was no wind, flickering on and off. Everyone in the audience was aware of the change in the atmosphere. This song really destroyed their minds. From the beginning, it pulled every one of them into an incomparably depressed state of mind. Brooke's strength is tyrannical and his will is even more tenacious. However, he also recalled the reluctance and pain in his heart when he bid farewell to Captain Luffy and the others. He also recalled the despair and desolation he felt after waiting for 1,000 years without any news from his companions. What a despairing symphony it was. It was like a merciless monster, irresistibly and greedily devouring every inch of hope in the depths of one's heart. It could even make the most optimistic person lose all hope in an instant. Fortunately, everyone present is an undying rank expert and above. They have all experienced the trials and tortures between life and death. They all possess a constant and strong soul. Even in the face of such terrible setbacks and torture, they can still barely maintain their original hearts. Their souls were gradually brought into a storm by the music. They either dreamed of parting with their companions or dreamed of their loved ones being torn apart in front of them, or recalled their most respected captain being torn to pieces in defeat, or like Brooke, they became more and more desperate after thousands of years of bitter waiting. But they all persevered. No one would have thought that at this time, the one in the most awkward situation is not others, but the performer Qin Guang himself. F***CKU. I miscalculated. The audience is all undying rank. I'm not one. The old man is just a cute college student. When I learned this song in the piano world, my mind was sealed. I didn't feel anything at that time, but now I'm in a very bad situation. I've been pretending to be pretentious for a long time, and now the pretentious level is about to break through the sky. I was the first to be scared, and all my previous efforts have been wasted. I'm really F***ket up. Playing the piano in the sea of moments is poisonous. Originally, this song made a lot of people commit suicide after listening to it. Now, the emotional rendering seems to have been amplified by 100 times. The old man can't hold on any longer. As the saying goes, no matter how one calculates, one can't predict that the weakest one here is Qin Guang himself. But he has already forced himself into a corner and there is no way out. After playing for less than 10 minutes, Qin Guang's face was pale and his head was covered in cold sweat. He anxiously looked around, hoping that someone would give up first. You're in so much pain and look so ferocious. Quickly take out your knife and commit suicide. I beg you. Baldef, you idiot. You can't hold on any longer. Help. Qin Guang winked at Baldef. Baldef's mood became more and more excited. Mr. Wright actually values me so much, Baldef, must not let him down. I must hold on. My hockey is ready to burst out. Today, I will use Mr. Wright's great music to break through Haushiku hockey. I will use my whole life strength to defend Mr. Wright's majesty. Looking at the increasingly bright and fanatical light in Baldef's eyes, Qin Guang burst into tears. What should I do? Who the hell can save me? You little bastards, why are you so hot? At this time, Qin Guang finally deeply understood what Ruri had said, that his mind was not strong enough and his mind could not reach the true standard of a redeemer. At that time, Qin Guang reluctantly listened to it, but deep in his heart, he didn't take it seriously. Today he finally understood that he had messed up the piece he was playing. Perhaps he was the first person in history who would never be able to surpass him. As time passed, even if his mind was in a state of chaos, the music that was engraved into his instincts still made his fingers dance on the keys subconsciously. The air was thick and heavy, and even the light near the piano was absorbed by an inexplicable force. In Brooke's eyes, the place where Qin Guang and the piano were located gradually became a black hole, and looking at it, it only felt dark and misty. Nearly 200 undead rank powerhouses, each of them felt that the hockey in their body was cheering and jumping in this terrible test. They deeply knew that if they survived this, what awaited them would be a white tomorrow. Finally, 47 minutes passed. When the last note came to an end, Qin Guang also stopped. The imposing manner of nearly 200 hockey advanced at the same time suddenly erupted in the bar, forming a resonance. The bar's roof was instantly broken and the earth shook. The originally pitch-black night sky suddenly shone a bright ray of light from the sky, shining on the bar. 200 undead rank powerhouses stood up at the same time and looked at the place where Qin Guang and the piano were with a face full of worship. Everyone's face and body were shining with a great brilliance that transcended life and death. But Qin Guang and his piano were still in darkness. No matter how bright the light was, it couldn't illuminate his side, which was shrouded in black fog and couldn't even see his fingers. A terrible person like me is still alive in this world, I really let everyone down. These low murmurs and murmurs suddenly came from the black fog. Brooke and Baldef were startled. Sir Right. Baldef was the first to rush forward. Chapter 504. Bang. With another loud noise, Baldev used his hockey, which had just broken through the haushiku, to cut open the black fog with one palm. He saw Qin Guang's head hit the corner of the piano and his head was full of blood. Fuck. Lord Right is going to commit suicide. It turned out that he was really going to die. Everyone, at this moment, burst into tears and were moved to the extreme. In order to help everyone, Lord Right played this forbidden song that would make him depressed and not want to live. He succeeded. He made a total of 200 strong undead hockey advance, and even Brooke, one of the 12 sea emperors who had reached the peak of the Sea of Time, advanced to another new realm. He wants to set off a new era of the Sea of Time. What a great feeling this is. Qin Guang's head was full of blood and his eyes were listless as he looked at these people. His consciousness had been shattered by the impact of Black Sunday, which was integrated with the rules of the Sea of Time. He had a splitting headache as if there were 10,000 horses tied to ropes and tearing his body. Before his last consciousness collapsed, he only cursed in his heart. I'm playing in the wilderness, but this time I've gone too far. Then Qin Guang punched himself in the chest. Everyone, I'm going to die. He screamed hysterically again, what the F***CK? Oh my god. Bad luck. Qin Guang spurted blood and fell on his back. Brooke rushed forward and hugged Qin Guang. After a little test of hockey, he began to cry bitterly, Lord Right's heart is broken. Oh. No? Mr. Right. Oh my god. There was a whale below. Brooke plopped down on his knees, his eyes were so deep that his eyeballs could not be seen, and 2 drops of crystal clear tears flowed down. He thought to himself, I once thought that my dedication was great enough, but compared with you, I am simply the difference between the light of a firefly and the splendor of the sun and the moon. The news that Lord Right was killed by his own forbidden song in order to let 200 undying rankers advance into the Tyrant Aura realm swept through Treasure Island like thunder. As soon as Brooke knelt down, it was as if the first domino had been pressed. The 200 undying experts knelt down one after another. Then, the more than 1 million people on the island felt an indescribable grief in their hearts as they uniformly knelt down in the direction of Right Square. That night, the clouds and thunder were raging on Treasure Island. It was raining cats and dogs. Strong winds and lightning swept across the island. Everyone knelt in every corner of the island and cried sorrowfully. Even the heavens and earth of the Sea of Moments seemed to be grieving over Right's death. Only one person, with the most brainless worship, charged forward against the sudden storm and lightning, washed by the rain and tears. My Mr. Right, you can't die. This man was Bob. Of course Qin Guang wouldn't die. He had 99 chances to resurrect. In fact, the moment he died he resurrected immediately. But there was a slight accident. The unlucky Black Sunday was too fierce, and the aftereffects were too strong. Just as he was about to resurrect, his soul was scattered again. Thus, his whole person was stuck in a very mysterious state, on the verge of death but not dead, on the verge of life but not alive. His soul and body couldn't be unified, and he was only in a muddle-headed state of emptiness. Sooner or later, Qin Guang would be able to defeat Black Sunday, but it would take time. Under Bob's insistence, in the end, Qin Guang wasn't erected a tombstone. Within 3 days, Right Square was transformed. 200 undying experts personally took charge of the hard work. In the center of the square, a huge statue of the handsome Mr. Right was built. Behind the statue there was a hall made of white jade, named the Sage Temple. Qin Guang's body was placed in a crystal coffin, hidden in a ventilated and cool basement, guarded by Buldev and Brooke, who had decided to settle down here. Brooke was appointed as the first head of the Sage Temple's fan club by Bob, who claimed to know Right best. Buldev was the deputy head of the Sage Temple's fan club, and the other 200 undying experts were the backbone members of the fan club. More than 50 of them had armament hockey. Of course, they were born after the collective advancement. At that time, many people didn't understand why Bob didn't name it Knights Templar or Guardians of the Temple, but named such a lofty organization after food. Bob angrily rebuked everyone. When Mr. Right first came to Treasure Island, he praised me. He said that I was his first fan in the Transient Sea. What Mr. Right loved the most were fans. Mr. Right comes from a mysterious area that you can't even imagine. This is the culture of his hometown. Since it's the culture of Mr. Right's hometown, there must be a great philosophy in it. Brooke was the first to express his support. Moreover, I, Bob, can be 100% sure that although Mr. Right doesn't have the strength of an undying expert, he will definitely be resurrected in this body. Bob's words shocked everyone to death. His judgment was based on the information he had secretly investigated. According to the information, 100 years ago Mr. Right, the second officer of the Annie, was around 20 years old. The current Mr. Right was also a little over 20 years old. Mr. Right doesn't have an undying soul, which can only mean that he has an undying body and soul. Unlike other people's undying, he doesn't age at all. This was the reasoning of a professional intelligence merchant. Bob firmly believed that this was the secret he was most proud of. Even Buldev didn't know about it. Buldev comforted him. "Little Bob, I understand your feelings, but..." Bob jumped up and angrily hit Buldev. "Buldev, you idiot. As long as 1 year you will believe me." It didn't take a year. 3 months later, everyone believed Bob's judgment. How long can a dead body be preserved? This question doesn't need to be investigated too deeply. But after 3 months, Right's complexion was still rosy. If not for his lack of breathing and heartbeat, others would even think that he didn't die at all, but just fell into a deep sleep. Believe me, Mr. Right will definitely wake up. This is Bob's epitaph. 5 years later, in order to develop the sound shell brought back by Brooke into a phonograph shell, which can record zither music and broadcast it all over the world, the overworked Bob passed away on a quiet night at the age of 64. Before his death, he finally drew the last stroke on the design. The phonograph shell was announced. The zither music that Qin Guang left for his 10 disciples, as well as the 10 pieces he left for Brooke, were poured into countless phonographs, accompanied by merchant ships or pirate ships, and brought to all parts of the Sea of Transient. Not only that, but Brooke also systematized the musical notation taught by Qin Guang. Henceforth, the bards of the entire Sea of Transient will no longer have to practice alone. They will use the musical notation to record their every trace of inspiration, and at the same time, they can also learn new music from other people's musical notation. More powerful bards will be born in the Sea of Transient, and at the same time more powerful pirates will be born. Qin Guang first used the Black Sunday to raise the realm of 200 people on the spot, and then left behind the musical notation to change the profession of bards. In the foreseeable future, the strength of the pirates of the entire Sea of Transient will be greatly improved. Poseidon created the history of pirates, Gol Roger used his death to open the great era of pirates, and Mr. Right used his selfless dedication to open a new era of the strong. Another 5 years passed and the 4-year-old Bob followed a huge fleet back from the outer seas. This pirate group was called the Enroyal Pirate Group. Qin Guang fulfilled his promise, bestowing Bob with an undying soul, and after Bob was resurrected, he became a member of the Enroyal's crew. Although there were countless coincidences involved, the young but mature Bob believed that it was all Mr. Right's arrangement. The most mysterious new power in the Sea of Transient in the last 100 years, and Bullen, arrived with her sovereign king-like powerful fleet, causing Brooke to be extremely nervous. He and Buldev, who was guarding Treasure Island, brought dozens of undying rank experts to the port and waited. Buldev, although today I already possess the power of an overlord, and Bullen's mysteriousness is known to all. On the Royal, there are at least 300 undying rank experts. Nobody knows what frightening methods they have. Later, when the confrontation starts, you must protect the Sage Temple, and absolutely cannot disturb Lord Right's rest. Brooke shook his crutch and said in a heavy tone. Vicious Wolf Buldev's face was gloomy. Does this female devil and want to become enemies with the entire Sea of Transient? She actually dares to attack Treasure Island. This is simply unforgivable. Perhaps she is jealous of our status, and also wants to become Lord Right's follower. Another undying rank expert speculated. Seeing the fleet gradually approaching the shore, and the skull flag inlaid with roses becoming more and more distinct, Brooke waved his hand. Everyone be quiet. Prepare for battle. However, the confrontation between the two sides did not last for more than a second. The 20-year-old Anne, carrying the 4-year-old Bob in one hand, came treading on the waves, followed by Watney, Bartu, and other super experts. The 4-year-old Bob shouted in a childish voice, "Captain, don't shoot. We're on the same side." Buldev, do you still remember little Bob by the Daming Lake? Buldev and Bob, who had followed Qin Guang for a whole year, had heard Qin Guang muttering these two words when no one was around. At that time, the two also questioned Qin Guang for a long time, asking him what the captain's profession was, and which lucky woman Xia Yuha was. Qin Guang gave the two men a kick each. But about a month before his death, Bob felt that his condition was not right, and that he would not live long. He had already written his will and with Buldev, agreed on the secret signal to meet. At that time, Buldev ridiculed Bob for not working hard to train, saying that he had no hockey, and that it was impossible for him to obtain the qualification of immortality, but Bob said another famous saying left by Qin Guang, "You still have to have a dream, what if it comes true?" Now that the secret signal was correct, the hostility between Brooke and Buldev instantly melted. Buldev laughed so hard that he clutched his stomach. "Now you really have become little Bob." And threw little Bob far away, and Buldev caught him and pulled open his clothes. "Come little Bob, Grandpa will feed you milk." "Get lost," Bob roared at the top of his voice. Chapter 505. Since then, Annie directly lived in the Sage Temple. Although Brooke strongly opposed it, it was of no use. Annie knew Right 100 years earlier than him. "I have been waiting for him for 100 years. I don't want to waste another second. Brooke, although you may be a bit stronger than me now, if you must taste this old woman's fist, this old woman doesn't mind dismantling your skeleton." A crazy woman who waited for a man for 100 years, even Brooke didn't dare to look straight at her. Of course, what made him choose to concede was Bob's mediation, confirming that Qin Guang had indeed said that he was once the second officer on the Royal. When Qin Guang opened his eyes again, he saw a blonde girl with two big sapphire blue eyes bending down to wipe his body. "Who is this? Is this figure going to break through the horizon? Your career line is a bit explosive. Your posture of bending down is a bit undignified. Is there a heaven in the sea of time? Did I accidentally open a new world? Wait, this girl looks a bit familiar?" Perhaps because he had slept for too long, just waking up, his brain was still a bit slow. After a long time, a name gradually emerged in his heart. He finally remembered who she was. Captain Annie. Qin Guang's mouth was somewhat unclear. He hadn't spoken for a long time. He almost forgot how to use his vocal cords to pronounce. The 18-year-old Annie's body suddenly shook, and the silk handkerchief in her hand suddenly fell to the ground. She slowly raised her head, and a pair of beautiful eyes stared at him. After a short moment of silence, tears poured down like a tide. She frantically shook Qin Guang's shoulder, roaring at the top of her voice. "Right, you bastard. I waited for you for 100 years. You finally came back. But you slept here for 100 years. You are a complete bastard. How much do you want to torture me before you give up? Why don't you let me die quietly? Why let me die again and come back to life? Why let me bear this endless pain of longing? Why did you leave without saying goodbye? Why didn't you confess to me one more time?" I stared at the boundless night on the sea. I watched the flowers wither in the changing of the 4 seasons. I looked for you on the boundless sea while growing old and white-haired. Do you know how desperate I was? I wanted to die peacefully, but because of this damned undying soul, I had no choice but to wake up in my infancy. But from the moment I opened my eyes, even when I was still a baby, your name was always in my head. I finally heard from you. I crossed the ocean from 40 million kilometers away, tore apart 3 sea emperor monsters, defeated the black storm that no one could defeat, and shattered the lightning that fell from the sky. When I finally saw you, you were lying in this coffin like a corpse. I have to look at you year after year again. I have to look at your youthful face while I grow old day by day. Can you understand how afraid I was when you woke up? I was an ugly old woman, but I couldn't help but want to stay here and guard you. Qin Guang blankly looked at the crying Annie. Memories flooded in like a tide. He remembered that starry night when he was hung on the mast of Annie. After a long time he slowly said, I thought you didn't like me. You're a fool. If I didn't like you, I would have chopped you to death the first time you boarded the ship. Annie Polly, this female devil whose name shook the entire transient sea, the most powerful and mysterious sea emperor in the last 100 years. Even Brooke, who had been promoted to an overlord, didn't dare to look down on her. This fully deserving of being the most powerful woman in the transient sea, this woman who had already reincarnated between life and death 3 times, and waited for Qin Guang for 3 lifetimes. At this moment she gently stroked her long hair, looking like an innocent young girl. Frankly speaking, Qin Guang really didn't expect that after staying on in Royal for half a year, Annie would care so much about him. In his heart, he was more willing to regard Annie as a friend. He didn't dare to hope that this beautiful and powerful captain would truly like him. At that time he plucked up the courage to write her a love letter, but that was the result of losing a bet with old Jack and Bartu. Actually, I thought I wasn't that outstanding when I was the second officer. Qin Guang said again. Annie moved her face closer. No, in my heart, you are more outstanding than anyone else. You are like a devil descending from the sky, easily shredding my heart. Obviously, I only stayed with you for half a year, but I feel like I have stared at you for an entire 20 years. What kind of magic did you cast on me? Qin Guang's mouth was wide open. Indeed, in a sense, he had indeed stayed in the transient sea for 20 years, but that was the accumulation of 20 years of resurrection. This was the greatest secret in his heart. He originally thought that it was impossible for Annie to know about it. However, he had underestimated Annie's 6th sense. Perhaps, Annie was originally not an ordinary existence. Otherwise, when he first entered the realm of transient sea, he would not have unknowingly landed on her ship. All right. I'm sorry I can't explain it to you, but now I'm back. A woman waited for you for 200 years, the most appropriate thing to say to her, besides the 3 words I'm sorry, Qin Guang really didn't know how to answer. What's even more sorrowful is, he knew that sooner or later he would leave, so he couldn't even give her a promise. Annie smiled. Yes, I didn't wait in vain. How are Warnie and the others? Qin Guang asked. They're fine, but now I don't have time to reminisce with you, my whole body is about to burn. Annie? Don't be like this. I still haven't mentally prepared myself. This is too sudden. I will resist. If you can resist Annie, who has the strongest haki and is now the head of the transient sea's 5 hegemons, using the words you once taught me, I will give you 32 likes. The deafening rumble spread to every corner of Leyte Island in an instant. Bob, who was lying on a beach chair sucking on a feeding bottle while glaring at Baldy fiercely, fell off from the chair due to the impact. Oh no, my little Bob. Baldev, you idiot. The sound came from the holy temple. Something happened. When Baldev and Bob were about to reach the vicinity of the holy temple, Brooke came face to face. Brooke, you shameful deserter. Baldev and Bob cursed together. Brooke spat at the 2 men. Deserter my ass. Lord Wright is awake, oh ha. Then why are you running? Quickly kneel with me. Bob struggled in Baldev's arms. Poor little Bob. Every time he appeared he was either an old man or a baby. He had never been normal. Back then, when he returned with the Annie, he had taken good care of himself. As usual, he did not cultivate and instead became the butler of the Sage Temple. Based on Qin Guang's memory, he set up a Right Cultural Communication Company, sold phonographs to every corner of the transient sea, and built statues of Right on at least 100,000 floating islands. Then he died at the age of 92, and now he has just been resurrected and is now 2 years old. Brooke stopped Baldev, who was about to go forward. You can't go. People will die. Baldev roared angrily, gritting his teeth. Brooke, if you make trouble again, I will bite you to death. Lord Wright is doing shameful things with Captain Annie. This sound, it's this sound. It's them. If you want to die, I won't stop you, but don't stop me from evacuating the crowd. Holy shit. Buldev cursed. Killing in the grass. Bob cursed with his unique baby voice. The violent tremors continued for a full 8 hours. The strongest pile driver in history finally met his match. The 28 ocean emperors of the Age of Experts and Annie, the leader of the 5 hegemons, were naturally not easy to deal with. After waking up, Qin Guang's body was as powerful as a cheat in the transient sea. Of course, this was not the real divine immortal cup. His current body was powerful, but it couldn't be brought back to the real world. But this wasn't important. The important thing was that he could finally fight 80,000 rounds with others. This battle, the sky fell and the earth cracked, the sun and moon lost their light, the mountains howled and the seas roared. From noon when the sun was shining brightly, all the way until late at night when the waning moon hung high in the sky. The entire Central Sea was shaken by Wright Island, causing huge waves. Even the vast central continent seemed to have been hit by someone. The above was purely boasting. But it was indeed frightening. Qin Guang lay in a huge pit that was at least a dozen zhang deep, his face filled with confusion. The magnificent sage temple had long been razed to the ground, the white jade shattered to the point where not even dregs were left. I don't know how you did it, but in short, your pile driver idol has appeared. It's a huge D*CK, I've already shaped it for you. Yuli's voice suddenly sounded in his mind. Fuck. This wave is good, very strong by. In just one shot, the pile driver idol had appeared. Also, what the hell do you mean you've already shaped it for me? I want to change it. At least change it to the shape of a cup. That way, when I mention this idol in the future, I can only say, it's an indescribable shape of 100 zhang. At this moment, Qin Guang was dumbfounded. Wait a minute. Speaking of which, there's still the Qilin arm. Qin Guang screamed in his mind. Yuli ignored him. Annie, who was dripping with sweat, came over again. Dear Right Qin again? No. Let me take a breather. The strongest pile driver in history lowered its noble head in front of the even more unreasonable pirate queen. Qin Guang covered his face. I've been F*King pushed down again. Why again? In short, after half an hour, the people hiding in the east corner of Wright Island finally returned one after another. The total population of Wright Island today was much less than when it was called Treasure Island. In the past 100 years, because the Sage of the Sea rested here, the original trading function of Treasure Island was gradually stripped away and abandoned. This place turned into an existence similar to the Church's Holy Land, and was eventually renamed Wright Island. Those who could settle down here were either representatives of major forces, outstanding bards, or descendants of those who worked in Wright's bar. Other than that, there were also core members of Wright's Cultural Communication Company, where Bob was the general manager. Qin Guang first spent an hour to comfort everyone, especially old Warnie, who used to be a little follower and an old bastard. Now little Bob couldn't stop crying. Annie, on the other hand, went to sleep with satisfaction. According to her words, my man is back, I'm going back to be a noble lady. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.